Hey guys, tonight's we begin with the hours medieval history prefers you forget. Not the battles, not the kings, but the long, dark stretch between sunset and sunrise when boredom becomes dangerous. You are standing in a candlelit room with no entertainment except gossip, dice, ghosts, and whatever the tavern owner did not clean off the floor. This is the medieval night shift, where people sing badly, gamble aggressively, scare themselves on purpose, and invent games that involve bones, fire, or mild risk of death. Fun is improvised, often illegal, and occasionally cursed. You are not relaxing tonight. You are surviving darkness with laughter, superstition, and very poor impulse control. This is what happens when humanity has too much night and not enough rules. So before you get too cozy, take a second to gently tap that new hype button YouTube just added. It really does help little guys like me push through the algorithm. And be sure to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now, get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. Nightfall does not arrive gently. It slams into the medieval world like a door closing too hard. One moment the sun is limping toward the horizon. The next, the streets belong to shadow, smoke, and everyone who has been waiting all day to behave badly. You feel it immediately. The air changes. Sounds carry farther. Laughter feels sharper. Silence feels like a trap. You are taught that night is for rest, but no one here believes that. Night is when things slip, rules blur, faces become guesses. A man you nodded to politely at noon now squints at you like he is deciding whether you owe him money, an apology, or blood. Darkness does not calm the town. It agitates it, like shaking a box full of nervous animals and calling it bedtime. There are no streetlights. Only torches that hiss and sputter like they are tired of being helpful. Their light stretches just far enough to suggest safety and not far enough to deliver it. Corners become personality tests. Doorways feel occupied even when they are not. Every sound arrives late and distorted. Footsteps echo behind you, then vanish, then return with friends. You learn quickly that going home early is suspicious. Anyone indoors too soon must be hiding something or avoiding someone. Honest people linger. They drink. They talk too loudly. They wander without destinations. Night rewards confidence, even fake confidence. Especially fake confidence. The streets grow crowded in a way daylight never manages. Daytime belongs to labor and hierarchy. Night belongs to everyone equally, which is to say, dangerously. Bakers argue with soldiers. Monks pretend not to notice prostitutes. Children dart between legs long past any sensible bedtime. No one is supervising. No one wants to. Every tavern leaks noise like a wound. Music tumbles out in crooked rhythms. Laughter bursts too suddenly to be trustworthy. You pass open doors and glimpse tables thick with cups, hands slamming wood, faces flushed from wine, and something closer to permission. People shout stories they already told earlier, but louder now. Convinced volume improves accuracy. Someone is losing money they cannot afford to lose, and smiling like it is a hobby. You realize that darkness gives people cover to become more themselves, or less. It is hard to tell which. A respectable woman pulls her hood lower and says something she would never say under the sun. A pious man laughs at a joke that would earn him a sermon tomorrow. Night is a mask, and everyone wears it badly. You also realize why the church keeps warning people about it. Darkness is not sinful on its own. It is just efficient. It speeds things up. Anger travels faster. Desire needs less encouragement. Rumors grow legs and start jogging. By candlelight, bad ideas feel inspired. Good ideas feel negotiable. Fights begin over nothing and end over pride. A bumped shoulder turns into a shouting match because there is an audience now. Torches gather people the way blood gathers flies. Someone cheers. Someone bets. Someone remembers an old grievance that suddenly feels relevant again. Night remembers everything you forgot during the day and brings it back without context. Even the quiet is loud. When a street finally empties, it hums. Rats scuttle, wood creaks. Somewhere a window closes too carefully. You are never alone. You are just temporarily unobserved. That is worse. Your imagination fills the gaps eagerly, like it has been bored all afternoon waiting for this shift. Homes do not feel safe either. Thin walls carry arguments. Laughter from next door feels invasive. A candle goes out and suddenly the room feels much larger, as if darkness has weight and it is leaning inward. Sleep is not guaranteed. Dreams are busy tonight. You understand now why people invent night activities instead of surrendering to rest. Sitting still gives the dark too much time. Better to fill it with noise, games, songs, and bodies pressed close enough to confirm everyone is still real. Better to be part of the chaos than alone with it. Night is not a pause between days. It is its own world with its own laws, enforced inconsistently by drunk men and nervous prayers. You step carefully, speak casually, and keep moving. The medieval night is awake, alert, and watching. Silence is the first thing you notice is wrong. Not peaceful silence, not the kind people later romanticize, but the heavy, listening kind. The sort that makes you aware of your breathing and suddenly suspicious of it. In the medieval world, silence is never neutral. Silence means something has stopped, or worse, something is waiting. You feel it settle in after sunset, when the last work sounds fade and the city exhales. For a brief moment, there is quiet, and no one likes it. People glance at each other as if the air itself has broken a rule. Someone clears their throat too loudly. A dog barks and is immediately shushed, not because it is rude, but because it is confirming a fear everyone already has. Quiet gives your thoughts room to stretch, and that is dangerous territory. So people fix it the fastest way they know how. They make noise. Any noise. Good noise. Bad noise. Noise that technically qualifies as music if you squint and lower your expectations. A man starts singing in a voice that suggests enthusiasm has replaced talent. Another joins in, then a third, until the song collapses into shouting with rhythm. No one corrects them. Correction would slow things down. You learn quickly that medieval songs are not designed to be beautiful. They are designed to be loud, repetitive, and impossible to forget. The lyrics are simple because complexity invites pauses. Pauses invite silence. The melody loops like it is afraid to stop existing. People clap off beat and stomp on whatever surface will echo. Tables suffer. Floors endure. In taverns, instruments appear that should not. Someone produces a lute with 3 functioning strings and a confident attitude. Someone else bangs a drum that sounds like it was made from regret and animal skin. A pipe squeals its way into the room like a distressed bird. Together, they create something that resembles music the way a crowd resembles choreography. It is chaotic, communal, and oddly comforting. You understand that this is not about entertainment. It is about occupancy. Sound fills space the way light pretends to. As long as noise is happening, the dark feels less clever. Laughter becomes a tool. Shouting becomes a declaration. Singing together proves you are not alone and not being watched by something with better night vision. Stories get louder too. Tales that were whispered during the day are now proclaimed with dramatic flair. Every ghost story includes hand gestures. Every miracle story grows additional details. Someone claims to have heard footsteps where there were none. Someone else insists that was just the wind, even though there is no wind, and everyone knows it. The argument becomes part of the noise, and that is the point. Silence, after all, is when the mind wanders. It remembers things. It imagines consequences. It wonders whether that shadow moved on its own. Medieval nights are long, and sleep does not arrive on command. If you lie still, the creaks of wood and distant animals start to sound intentional. Better to drown them out with a chorus of human nonsense. You notice how quickly people volunteer to sing even when they cannot, especially when they cannot. A bad song is better than no song. Off-key voices blend into a kind of safety net. Someone forgets the words and replaces them with whatever fits. No one objects. Accuracy is not the goal. Continuity is. Outside, The streets echo with similar efforts. Drunk voices bounce between stone walls. Rhythmic chanting erupts from nowhere and spreads like a rumor. Someone is playing a game that involves counting loudly and slapping someone else when they get it wrong. The rules are unclear, but the volume is impressive. Even prayers become louder at night. People mutter them not out of devotion but insurance. A prayer spoken loudly can scare off whatever listens in silence. Bells ring longer than necessary. Someone bangs on a door just to hear it answer. Children sing nonsense, rhymes that make no sense, and that is why they work. When the noise finally thins, everyone stiffens. Cups pause mid-air. A song trails off and collapses. For a heartbeat, there is nothing. The kind of nothing that presses against your ears. Someone laughs too sharply. Another starts clapping for no reason at all. The sound returns quickly, relieved, like it nearly forgot its job. You realize medieval people are not afraid of the dark itself. They are afraid of what happens when there is nothing to interrupt it. Silence gives night too much authority. Noise takes some of it back. You sit at a tavern table that has never been level and never will be. The wood is scarred with knife marks, burn rings, and something darker that everyone pretends is spilled wine. A candle droops in the middle like it has given up, dripping wax onto dice that look older than most reputations in the room. Nighttime games have begun, which means the rules are flexible. The stakes are imaginary until they are not, and everyone suddenly believes they are very good at math. Dice appear from pockets, sleeves, boots, and places no one questions. They are bone, carved badly, smoothed by years of bad decisions. Someone swears they are lucky. Someone else swears they are cursed. Both statements are delivered with the same confidence and the same breath that smells like ale. You are invited to play not because you asked, but because you exist within arm's reach of the table. The first roll is friendly, laughing friendly. Coins clink lightly. A man slaps your shoulder hard enough to count as encouragement. Another tells you the odds in a way that suggests he does not understand them either. At this stage, dice are social glue. They give hands something to do and mouths something to argue about. Friendships are formed quickly here, bonded by shared hope and selective memory. As the night deepens, the game tightens. Coins become promises. Promises become objects. A ring changes hands. A knife is placed on the table not as a threat, but as collateral, which is somehow worse. Someone says, "Just one more roll," the most dangerous sentence available after sunset. Everyone nods, because everyone believes it. You learn that dice do not just decide winners, they decide hierarchy. A lucky streak turns a nobody into a temporary king. A losing run strips confidence like bark from a tree. Jokes sharpen, compliments fade. Someone accuses someone else of cheating, a charge that lands heavily in a room full of people who all are, technically, cheating in different ways. The tavern owner pretends not to notice. This is good for business. Fights mean drinks spilled and drinks reordered. He wipes the same spot on the counter over and over, listening with one ear for the sound of furniture moving too fast. Dice games end friendships faster than sermons ever could. A bad roll feels personal. A good roll feels stolen. You notice how carefully people watch hands. Eyes flick down at the moment of the throw, then snap back up to faces, searching for guilt or triumph. Silence falls between rolls, thick and tense, broken only by the rattle of bone on wood. That sound is the heartbeat of the table. Everyone leans in, even those pretending not to care. Debts stack invisibly. No one writes them down. Memory is the ledger, and memory is selective. A man claims you owe him more than you remember agreeing to. Another insists he will pay tomorrow, a word that means nothing at night. Someone laughs too loudly to hide worry. Someone else grows very quiet. At a nearby table, voices rise. A game has gone wrong there. A cup is overturned. A chair scrapes back. Accusations fly, vague but sharp. Cheater, liar, thief. Words that do not require proof once spoken loudly enough. The crowd watches without intervening, because this is also part of the game. Outcome unknown, odds unfavorable. Back at your table, the stakes climb again. A man bets his coat, despite the cold outside. Another bets a favor, unspecified but ominous. Someone jokes about betting their life and everyone laughs, which feels like tempting something that is already listening. The dice roll again. This time, the loser does not smile. He stares at the table as if the wood betrayed him personally. His hand tightens around a cup until it cracks. Someone suggests another round to smooth things over. Someone else suggests leaving while still breathing. The disagreement escalates quickly because the night is tired and patience thins with every candle that burns down. You realize that dice are not really about chance. They are about control. The illusion of it, the loss of it, the hope of reclaiming it with one more throw. In a world where daylight dictates your role, dice offer rebellion. For a few moments, the future belongs to bone and gravity instead of birth. A knife is drawn at the other table. Not dramatically, casually, like punctuation. The tavern exhales. People shift, calculating exits and loyalties. Someone intervenes just in time. Someone else is dragged outside to cool off, which rarely works but looks responsible. Your game ends quietly. Coins are counted. Grudges are noted. New friendships are downgraded to acquaintances. You stand, aware that you are leaving with exactly what the dice allowed you to keep. As you step away, the rattle begins again behind you, because someone else has decided they are lucky tonight. The dice do not care. You learn quickly that proper equipment is optional and danger is not. When dice are scarce or distrusted, people improvise. Bones from dinner become instruments of fate. Stones scraped from the street are assigned values with passionate logic that collapses under questioning. Someone produces a handful of marked sticks and swears this is how it is done in another town. A town no one can verify and no one cares to. The table changes shape depending on the game. Sometimes it is flat and formal. Sometimes it is the floor. Sometimes it is a barrel turned sideways, sticky with old wine and promises. Coins are not always welcome. They are too predictable. Real excitement comes from wagering things that matter in ways money cannot immediately fix. Gloves, tools, food meant for tomorrow. Information, favors that sound harmless until you imagine explaining them later. You notice how the rules are explained differently to everyone. The confident players speak quickly, layering instructions like spells. By the time you realize something was omitted, the game is already in motion. No one lies outright. They simply move fast and smile while doing it. Confusion is part of the entertainment. Bones clatter across the surface, notched and uneven, bouncing unpredictably. Someone claims the bounce favors courage. Someone else insists it punishes arrogance. Both statements are delivered by people who have just lost. When a bone rolls off the table and lands near the fire, everyone leans in as if it might decide something important on its own. Stones are thrown, dropped, flicked, and occasionally swallowed by shadows under benches. Each disappearance is treated like a sign. The crowd murmurs approval or disapproval depending on whose turn it was. Superstition fills any gap left by fairness. A chipped stone is lucky until it is not. A smooth one is dangerous because it feels confident. Improvised games thrive because they feel illegal even when they are not. There is pleasure in bending rules that were never written down. You sense the excitement sharpen whenever the risk increases just enough to be noticed. Someone suggests adding a penalty. Someone else suggests adding a physical consequence. Laughter follows, but it is the kind that tests the idea rather than dismisses it. You play a game involving bones tossed into a circle drawn with ash. Miss the circle and you drink. Hit the circle and someone else drinks. Hit the center and you choose who drinks. The brilliance of it is how quickly it escalates. Cups refill, hands shake slightly. Aim becomes a memory. Another game uses stones hidden in fists. Guess wrong and you owe something. Guess right and you take something. The guessing grows personal. People stare too long. Accusations surface disguised as jokes. Someone insists they can read faces. Someone else insists faces lie. Both are correct often enough to keep going. Danger seeps in quietly. A wager includes a knife not as a threat but as proof of seriousness. Someone bets a story they promise not to tell. Someone else bets silence, which feels heavier. The crowd tightens. Games like this feed on attention. The more people watch, the harder it becomes to stop. You realize these games exist because safe fun is suspicious. Enjoyment without consequence looks lazy. Medieval knights respect effort. Bruises are proof you participated. Embarrassment is proof you tried. Winning without risk feels like cheating the universe. At one point, someone introduces a game that involves throwing objects near bare feet. Accuracy matters. So does trust. You flinch when a stone skids closer than expected. Laughter erupts. Half relief, half disappointment. Someone says you are lucky. Someone else says luck runs out. Both sound like warnings. The tavern owner watches from a distance, calculating when to intervene. He allows the games to continue as long as blood stays theoretical. The moment it becomes practical, he will pretend it was never allowed. Everyone understands this agreement. It keeps things lively without paperwork. As the night wears on, the objects grow stranger. Buttons, teeth, a bent spoon. Each carries its own mythology within minutes. Someone insists the spoon remembers meals. Someone else insists teeth remember pain. The logic is questionable but delivered with conviction, which is the local currency. You lose something small and feel it more than expected. You win something meaningless and feel proud anyway. That is the trick. The objects matter less than the moment they represent. For a brief time, your fate balanced on something you could hold. Eventually, someone gets hurt enough to matter. Not badly, but visibly. The games pause. Concern flickers, then fades as the injury is deemed survivable. A new game is proposed almost immediately, adjusted slightly to account for the damage. Entertainment here is not about passing time. It is about testing it. Bones, stones, and scraps become excuses to feel alive in a world that prefers endurance over joy. When the games finally dissolve, you carry with you the quiet understanding that if it had been safer, no one would have bothered. You do not realize it is a fight at first. It looks like a conversation that has lost patience. Two men stand too close, voices low and tight, faces flushed from drink and pride. The circle forms naturally, the way water finds a crack. People drift nearer under the excuse of curiosity, then stay because this is better than sitting. Someone places a bet before the first blow lands. Not loudly, casually. A coin slides across a table edge. Another follows. The idea spreads faster than the argument ever could. By the time fists rise, there is already money in motion. These fights are not official. No referee. No rules beyond what the crowd decides in real time. There is no bell to stop it, and no one assigned to care if it goes too far. That uncertainty is the appeal. A sanctioned fight is a performance. This is a gamble with consequences. The first punch is sloppy. Cheers erupt anyway. People shout encouragement that sounds suspiciously like instructions. Someone yells advice that contradicts itself. Someone else laughs too hard. Already drunk on the possibility of violence, you feel the crowd lean forward as one body, hungry and focused. More bets are placed mid-fight. Odds shift based on blood, balance, and who looks angrier. Someone bets on the man already losing because comebacks make better stories. Someone bets against him because teeth matter. Coins change hands without counting. Trust is implied and rarely honored. You notice how no one calls for help. Even when a nose breaks with a sound like splitting fruit, the crowd roars approval. Pain is proof the event is working. A fight that ends quickly disappoints everyone involved. They wanted more time to choose sides. The fighters are not professionals. That is obvious. Their footwork is terrible. Their defense is optimism. They swing wide, miss often, and breathe like bellows on fire. Every mistake earns laughter. Every landed hit earns applause. This is less about skill and more about endurance. Someone falls. The crowd inhales. A brief pause hangs in the air, heavy with calculation. Is this over? Should it be? The man on the ground moves, barely, and the crowd exhales in relief. The fight continues. Survival is the minimum requirement. You feel the strange morality of it settle in. This is not cruelty for cruelty's sake. It is participation. Everyone here has been powerless all day. Watching two people choose violence gives the rest permission to feel something sharper than fatigue. A second fight breaks out nearby, inspired rather than planned. A shove becomes a challenge. A challenge becomes a spectacle. The crowd splits briefly, then rearranges itself to accommodate both. Someone runs between circles shouting odds like a town crier with a gambling problem. There are moments when it nearly stops. When someone hits the ground wrong, when a head strikes stone, the cheering falters. Eyes dart. Someone mutters a prayer they do not finish. But if the fallen person twitches, even slightly, the noise surges back. Crisis avoided. Entertainment resumes. You notice how quickly the crowd absolves itself. They are not responsible. They did not throw the punch. They only watched. They only cheered. Accountability dissolves in numbers. If everyone is complicit, no one feels guilty enough to leave. At one point, a fighter stumbles toward the edge of the circle, eyes unfocused. Someone pushes him back in. Not aggressively, practically. The message is clear. Finish what you started, or disappoint us all. The man swings again, fueled by something that looks like stubbornness and fear. When it finally ends, it does not feel like a conclusion. One man is standing, the other is not. That is enough. The crowd disperses quickly, interest spent. Bets are settled loudly and unfairly. Arguments flare over technicalities invented seconds ago. Someone claims a debt. Someone denies it. A new conflict threatens to begin. The loser is dragged away by friends or by gravity. The winner raises his arms and then lowers them when he realizes no one is watching anymore. Glory here is brief and unpaid. Injury lingers. You stand there, aware that you just watched something that could have ended much worse. You cheered once without meaning to. It surprised you how easy it was. Night makes spectators of everyone. You sit close enough to the fire that your shins feel toasted and your back feels ignored. The circle tightens as if the flames themselves are telling everyone to lean in. Someone clears their throat with ceremonial importance. This is not casual conversation anymore. This is storytelling, which means everyone present has silently agreed to be unsettled on purpose. The first story begins slowly, which is how you know it is serious. Names are mentioned. Places you passed earlier are described in unnecessary detail. A bridge you crossed without thinking is suddenly the site of something unfinished. The storyteller watches faces carefully, adjusting pace like a musician testing tension. When someone scoffs, the story becomes more specific. When someone laughs, it grows teeth. These are not ghost stories as you understand them. No one says once upon a time. No one admits disbelief. The tone is practical, almost instructional. This happened. This happens. This is why you do not linger there after dark. Laughter bubbles up occasionally, but it is nervous and brief. Like a reflex, everyone regrets indulging. You notice how the stories are framed as favors. The teller is not trying to scare you. They are trying to help. They heard you are new. They would hate for you to make a mistake. The warning is wrapped in entertainment, because fear is easier to swallow when it comes with a punchline. Details stack carefully. The ghost does not shriek. It waits. It knocks politely. It mimics voices you trust. Someone in the circle nods too quickly, as if confirming something they wish they had not remembered. Another person interrupts to add a detail of their own, improving the story by making it worse. Every tale has a lesson, and none of them are comforting. Do not walk alone. Do not follow lights. Do not answer when your name is called at night unless you are certain who is speaking. Certainty, you realize, is not guaranteed here. It is merely assumed until proven fatal. The fire pops and someone jumps. Laughter follows, louder than necessary. Someone accuses the fire of bad timing. The storyteller smiles, pleased. Timing is everything. Fear needs rhythm. As the stories continue, they grow more local. A well outside the walls. A road that curves when it should not. A house with an extra window that no one remembers building. These are not distant legends. These are places you could reach with a short walk and poor judgment. You start to understand why people gather for this. Shared fear is a kind of armor. If everyone knows the same dangers, they feel manageable. The dark becomes mapped through narrative. Monsters are assigned habits and boundaries. If you follow the rules, you might be fine. Might. Someone tells a story that ends badly. No escape, no clever trick, just disappearance. The circle goes quiet in a way that feels intentional. The silence presses in, heavy and listening. Then someone coughs. Someone else makes a joke that lands poorly, but breaks the spell enough to let people breathe again. You realize the fun is not in being scared, it is in surviving the telling. Each story is a rehearsal for panic. You practice listening without running. You practice laughing while imagining the worst. It is training disguised as leisure. Children linger at the edge of the circle, pretending not to listen while absorbing everything. No one sends them away. They need these stories too. Better they learn fear in a crowd than alone in the dark. One storyteller insists they saw something themselves. The claim is delivered casually, which makes it more convincing. They describe a shape that did not behave correctly, a sound that arrived before its source. The group listens harder now. This one is not a legend. This is a neighbor. When questions arise, answers are vague. Some things do not like to be named. Some things listen when you talk about them too directly. The logic is questionable but internally consistent. Everyone nods because disagreement feels risky. Eventually the fire burns lower and the stories thin. The circle loosens reluctantly. People stand and stretch, laughing again, louder now, as if volume can push the images back where they belong. You feel the night watching, amused. As you leave, you catch yourself avoiding certain paths without fully knowing why. The stories worked. They entertained you into caution. Somewhere behind you, someone is already starting another tale for those who arrived late. Warnings are best remembered when they come with applause. You notice the shift when the stories stop being told and start being tested. Someone glances into the dark beyond the firelight a little too long. Someone else whispers a name that does not belong to anyone present. Laughter follows, quick and sharp, but it carries an edge. This is no longer about warning. This is about seeing who flinches. Fear, you learn, is not avoided here. It is exercised, like a muscle. People poke at it nightly to keep it strong. A quiet night feels unproductive. Nothing learned, nothing proven. So they manufacture moments. Someone blows out a candle without warning. Darkness swallows the circle for half a breath. A few people gasp. Someone yelps. The candle is relit immediately, followed by applause and accusations of cowardice that sound affectionate but are carefully remembered. The point has been made. Everyone checks their heartbeat and feels oddly accomplished. You watch as people take turns inventing scares, just convincing enough to work. A scrape of wood behind someone's chair. A sudden shout from the edge of a doorway. A tossed pebble timed perfectly to coincide with a story's most ominous pause. The reactions are studied closely. A jump earns teasing. A scream earns respect. Too calm, and people try harder next time. There is a strange generosity to it. Fear is shared, not hoarded. When someone startles, the group laughs with them, not at them, mostly. This is bonding through controlled terror. You scare your friends because you would rather they panic now than freeze later when it matters. You begin to understand the logic. In a world full of real dangers, practicing fear feels responsible. If you can handle a fake threat, maybe you will handle a real one better. Or at least you will scream sooner, which is apparently useful. Games form around it. Someone dares another to walk a few steps into the dark and come back. The distance is negotiable. The rules change depending on confidence. A person who volunteers too eagerly is sent farther. Someone who hesitates is encouraged loudly and relentlessly. Cheers follow their return, even if nothing happened, especially if nothing happened. Survival counts. You try not to look too eager or too hesitant. Both are noticed. The night is an audience with excellent memory. Children are involved again, because of course they are. Someone hides behind a barrel and jumps out at them, earning shrieks and laughter. The adults nod approvingly. Better to learn early that fear passes. Better to learn that screaming brings people running. Even religion gets involved. Someone pretends to see a demon near the well and crosses themselves dramatically. Someone else insists demons hate laughter and starts cackling until everyone joins in. The ritual becomes ridiculous and effective. Whatever was imagined retreats under the weight of mockery. You notice how often fear is followed by explanation. A scare lands. Hearts race. Then someone explains how it was done. Here is where I hid. Here is how I timed it. The lesson is subtle but clear. Fear has mechanics. It can be understood. It can be replicated. It can be managed. Not all scares are kind. Sometimes someone pushes too far. A scream lingers too long. A person goes quiet instead of laughing. The group recalibrates quickly. Apologies are made through jokes. Someone offers a drink. The night wants tension, not trauma. There is an unspoken line, blurry but enforced. You participate eventually. Not boldly, but enough. You knock on a door and run. You whisper a name behind someone's back. You feel the thrill when it works and the embarrassment when it does not. Either way, you are included now. Fear is currency, and you have paid in. As the hours pass, the scares grow sillier. Exhaustion dulls precision. A dramatic howl turns into coughing. A planned jump becomes a stumble. Laughter overtakes intention. The night softens as it wears on. Still, one last scare always lands hardest. Someone waits until everyone relaxes, until conversation drifts, until guards drop. Then a sudden noise slices through the calm. Chairs scrape, a curse flies, hearts pound, and then laughter floods back in, louder than before. Fear, you realize, gives shape to the night. It fills empty hours with purpose. It sharpens senses dulled by routine. It reminds everyone that being alert is not the same as being unhappy. When the darkness finally loosens its grip, people head home lighter than they arrived. They scared each other because it worked. You realize quickly that medieval drinking games are not about having a good time. They are about sorting people, stripping them down socially, emotionally, and occasionally physically, until everyone knows exactly where they stand and who should not be trusted near sharp objects. Joy is incidental. Chaos is the objective. The game begins innocently enough. A cup is filled. A rule is announced loudly and incorrectly. Someone drinks because they blinked at the wrong time. Laughter follows, warm and inviting. The kind that pretends this is harmless. It is not. The rules multiply like rats. Miss a word in a song. Drink. Interrupt a story. Drink. Fail to catch a cup tossed unexpectedly across the table. Drink. And apologize for disappointing everyone. You are welcomed eagerly. New participants are valuable. Fresh dignity is a resource meant to be depleted. Someone explains the game to you while someone else changes it mid-sentence. You nod because hesitation is weakness here. The cup is pressed into your hand before you can ask what is in it. It tastes like poor planning and optimism. The real danger is not the alcohol. It is the attention. Every move you make is observed, interpreted, and weaponized. Someone points out the way you drink. Too fast, too slow, trying too hard. Someone invents a rule about it on the spot. The group agrees instantly. Democracy works beautifully when everyone wants the same thing. Drinking games here are not fair. They are performative. The loudest players rarely drink. The quiet ones drown. Someone pretends to forget the rules to force someone else to drink. Someone remembers rules that never existed and insists they have always been there. Arguments erupt and are resolved by more drinking, which feels efficient. Songs are involved because music makes humiliation festive. Verses repeat endlessly, designed to trip tongues already struggling. Miss a word and the table erupts. The punishment is swift. Someone pounds the table in rhythm. Someone else laughs so hard they spill their drink and are punished for that too. Mercy is considered suspicious. As the night drags on, the games turn personal. Names are invoked. Questions are asked that should not be answered honestly. Refusal is treated as confession. A man drinks rather than explain himself. A woman drinks rather than deny something everyone already believes. Secrets slide out disguised as jokes and land heavier than intended. You watch alliances form and dissolve in real time. Two friends conspire to protect each other until one slips, then the other hesitates just long enough to be noticed. The room pounces. Loyalty is tested constantly, and failure is educational. Someone proposes a game that involves standing. Balance is now part of the challenge. People sway. The floor feels offended by the attempt. A stumble earns cheers. A fall earns a chant. Someone is helped up only to be given another cup. Kindness here is circular and cruel. You feel yourself changing. Words come easier and wiser at the same time. Decisions feel bold until they are irreversible. You laugh at things you would judge in daylight. You participate in someone else's embarrassment because not participating would isolate you next. At some point, someone drinks too much too fast. The room goes quiet for half a breath. This is the line. Everyone pretends not to see it, because acknowledging it would end the game. Someone cracks a joke. Someone refills a cup. The moment passes. The destruction is subtle but thorough. Reputations bend. Hierarchies reset. Someone cries quietly near the door, while someone else sings loudly to cover it. Tomorrow, apologies will be made, but tonight, they would ruin the momentum. When the games finally sputter out, the room looks altered, tables stickier, voices hoarse, people closer or farther apart in ways that will matter later. You step outside into cooler air, head spinning, ears ringing, stomach negotiating terms. You understand now. These games are not about drinking together. They are about surviving together, badly, loudly, and memorably. If you can endure this, you can endure each other in daylight. And if you cannot, everyone will remember. You hear the singing before you understand it. It spills out of the tavern in uneven waves, slurred and confident, like a challenge thrown at the night. This is not music meant to soothe or impress. This is music meant to provoke, the kind that dares someone to respond louder, dirtier, and with fewer apologies. Inside, the room vibrates with it. Tables thump in rhythm that exists only because everyone agrees it does. Voices pile on top of each other, competing for dominance. The lyrics are obscene by design, stitched together from insults, body parts, and jokes that work only because everyone pretends not to blush anymore. Someone sings about someone else's mother. Someone else improves the verse with alarming specificity. The crowd howls approval. You realize this is not a song so much as an attack, delivered with melody. Each line is aimed. Each rhyme sharpens an old grievance or invents a new one. The target laughs along. At first, laughing is armor, but armor cracks quickly when the chorus keeps coming. Musical battles form without announcement. Two singers square off across a table, eyes locked, voices raised. Each takes turns improvising verses designed to humiliate. The crowd acts as judge, jury, and accelerant. Cheers reward cruelty. Booing demands escalation. Cleverness matters less than commitment. If you hesitate, you lose. Someone produces a drum that sounds like it has survived several wars. Someone else bangs a spoon against a mug. Instruments are optional. Volume is not. The rhythm grows faster as insults sharpen. Rhymes get sloppier. Meaning dissolves into tone. If you sound confident enough, anything scans. You watch a man smile thin as a song circles back to him again. The singer across from him leans into it, eyes gleaming, voice cracking with effort and something personal. Laughter spikes. Someone spills a drink and no one cares. This is better. You learn quickly that these songs are cumulative. An insult sung earlier can be resurrected and expanded later by someone else. The crowd remembers everything worth repeating. Forgetting is forgiven. Weakness is archived. Women join in too, and the room shifts slightly when they do. Their verses cut cleaner, faster, and with less patience for nonsense. The crowd loves it. Someone yells encouragement that crosses a line and is immediately dismantled in song by three people at once. Applause erupts. Justice is musical tonight. The boundary between humor and harm blurs. A verse lands wrong. The laughter stutters. The target goes quiet. The singer does not notice or notices and continues anyway. The crowd leans forward, sensing blood in the water or the possibility of it. Someone throws an insult that feels too specific. A secret everyone pretended not to know suddenly has a melody. The room reacts instinctively. A sharp intake of breath. A few delighted gasps. Someone shouts that it does not count unless you can rhyme it again. The singer does. The target stands. Chairs scrape. The music falters but does not stop. Someone starts clapping to keep the rhythm alive. This is still entertainment until it is not. A shove breaks the spell. The crowd surges, half cheering, half repositioning for a better view. A fist swings, poorly aimed. It connects with a cheek instead of a mouth. Blood appears. bright and shocking in torchlight. Someone laughs too loudly. Someone else shouts encouragement that sounds like a song lyric. The music collapses into noise. Drums become weapons. A lute is lifted and wisely set back down. People pull at arms and shout names that are ignored. The singer who started it all looks startled, then proud, then concerned in rapid succession. The fight ends as abruptly as it began. Someone bleeds enough to be escorted outside. Someone cries, quietly, near the wall, humiliated more than hurt. The crowd exhales, satisfied and slightly disappointed it did not go further. Someone starts singing again almost immediately. A different song, lighter, pretending nothing happened. The room accepts this lie gratefully. Apologies are embedded in jokes. The rhythm returns, slower now, cautious but persistent. You stand there, ears ringing, heart thudding, amazed at how quickly entertainment turned into injury and back again. Songs here are not harmless. They are tests. They ask how much you can take, how well you can dish it out, and how loudly you will laugh when it is not about you. The night hums with voices again, already forgetting the details while keeping the lesson. Do not sing unless you are ready to finish the verse. You fall in with them without meaning to. Nightwalkers do not announce themselves. They drift, collect, and suddenly you are part of a moving problem. No destination, no purpose anyone will admit to, just motion for its own sake. Like the streets are a board game and everyone wants another turn. They walk slow at first, testing the night. Boots scuff stone. Someone whistles badly. Someone else answers with a louder, worse whistle. The group grows as doors open and people step out, drawn by noise and the promise that something might happen if they stay awake long enough. Faces blur in torchlight. Names are optional. Intentions are not discussed. You learn that night walking is not wandering. Wandering suggests thought. This is orbiting boredom. Everyone here has already drunk, sung, argued, and laughed themselves hoarse. Sleep feels premature. Home feels too quiet. So they walk, because walking keeps the dark from closing in too tightly. Mischief begins small. A knock on a shutter, then running away like children who forgot they are adults. Someone rearranges a merchant's sign so it points nowhere useful. Laughter ripples through the group, sharp and pleased. The city is a prop now. It exists to be adjusted slightly out of place. Someone throws a pebble into an alley and everyone pauses, listening for reaction. A cat hisses. Someone cheers. Someone else bows as if that was the plan all along. The Nightwalkers reward any outcome. Success is optional. Participation is not. They talk as they move, conversations tangling and unraveling. Gossip travels fastest on foot. Stories repeat with new embellishments every few steps. By the end of the street, you are no longer sure which version you heard first. No one corrects anything. Accuracy is for daylight. You pass houses where candles still burn behind shutters. Someone suggests a dare. Another suggests a joke. The difference is theoretical. A rude song is sung quietly enough to be deniable. A rude gesture is made boldly enough to be remembered. Somewhere behind a door, someone shifts uncomfortably and pretends not to hear. The walkers feed off reaction. A window opens and someone shouts. The group scatters briefly, then reforms down the street, laughing harder for having been noticed. Attention is proof of existence. Being chased is a compliment. You notice how carefully they avoid actual danger while pretending not to. Dark alleys are approached, peered into, then bypassed with exaggerated bravery. Someone boasts about going farther last time. No one asks for details. Courage here is narrative, not practice. As the night deepens, the mischief sharpens. A bucket is tipped over. A stack of crates is nudged just enough to collapse loudly. The crash echoes like thunder. Everyone freezes, then bursts into laughter, so loud it feels like a challenge. No guards appear. The city, it seems, is tired. They roam past familiar places, made strange by darkness. The well looks deeper. The square looks wider. Statues seem to listen. Someone salutes one mockingly. Someone else apologizes just in case. Humor and superstition coexist comfortably here. You realize the walking itself is the entertainment, the uncertainty, the shared vigilance, the way everyone watches for movement while pretending they are fearless. Nightwalkers are not looking for trouble. They are seeing how close they can get without being caught. Eventually, the group thins. Some peel off, satisfied. Some stumble home, laughter trailing behind them like smoke. The core remains, restless and stubborn. They circle back, through streets already traveled, hoping repetition will produce novelty. Sometimes it does. A final act of mischief is proposed and abandoned. Fatigue sets in. Jokes lose their edge. Feet drag. The night feels heavier now, less playful. This is usually when someone does something stupid enough to matter. But tonight, mercy intervenes in the form of exhaustion. You stop with them at an intersection where paths diverge. No one marks the end. They simply drift away, one by one, into doorways and shadows. The spell breaks quietly. You stand alone for a moment, listening to the city settle. The streets feel altered, like they remember being used improperly. Night walking leaves no monuments, just echoes, displaced objects, and the faint satisfaction of having stayed awake long enough to matter to the dark. You hear about it before you see it. Word moves faster than daylight ever did. A punishment is scheduled, which means the evening has plans now. People adjust their routes, finish dinner early, bring children who should already be yawning. This is not treated like an interruption. It is treated like an event. You arrive to find a crowd already forming, loose and conversational, as if waiting for a musician to tune an instrument. Someone sells food nearby that smells aggressively fried. Someone else hands a child a sweet to keep them quiet. The scaffold stands in the center like a stage, solid and familiar. It has been used before. It will be used again. No one whispers. This is not a somber affair. People greet neighbors. They discuss the accused with the casual tone reserved for bad weather. You hear opinions delivered confidently by people who learned the details minutes ago. Guilt is assumed because otherwise this would be awkward. Families clustered together. Children perched on barrels or shoulders for a better view. Parents point things out in advance. That is the post. That is where the hands go. Do not stare when the crying starts unless you want nightmares. This is education disguised as recreation. The condemned arrives, escorted, not dramatically, just efficiently. The crowd quiets briefly, more out of habit than respect. Someone clears their throat. Someone else coughs. The person looks smaller up close, which feels disappointing to some. Villains are expected to take up space. The punishment begins, and the crowd reacts like an audience that knows when to clap. Gasps come on cue. A few cheers escape before being reconsidered. Laughter breaks out at moments that should not be funny but are, somehow, when viewed from a distance. Pain delivered publicly becomes abstract quickly. You notice how the crowd narrates everything. That must hurt. He deserves worse. My cousin had the same sentence. The commentary fills gaps where empathy might creep in. Talking keeps the discomfort manageable. Children ask questions. Adults answer carefully and incorrectly. This is why we obey. This is what happens if you steal. This is not usually this loud. The child nods, absorbing rules through spectacle. Fear delivered early saves time later. Someone throws something, not maliciously, playfully. The object misses, and someone laughs. Another object follows. The guards pretend not to notice until it becomes excessive, then restore order with a look that promises participation next time if lessons are not learned. You realize that public punishment works because it involves everyone. The condemned suffers, but the crowd participates by watching. Responsibility spreads thin. No one here feels cruel. They feel informed. They feel included. As the punishment continues, attention drifts. Conversations resume. People debate dinner plans. Someone tells a joke that lands well. The punished person becomes background noise, like a fire crackling. The human capacity to normalize anything is impressive and unsettling. When it ends, there is a collective release. Some clap, some sigh, some complain it was shorter than expected. Children are lifted down and adjusted. Coats are pulled tighter. The evening continues. You hear people discuss it afterward like a performance review. Could have been worse. Seen better. The executioner was sloppy tonight. The condemned cried too early. Someone mentions they preferred last winter's punishment because it had more build-up. Walking away, you feel the strange blend of satisfaction and discomfort settle in. The event filled time. It gave everyone something to talk about. It reinforced rules without requiring reading. You understand now why these punishments are public and timed for evening. Darkness amplifies emotion. Crowds amplify courage. Families attending together turn fear into tradition. Tomorrow, the scaffold will stand empty and ordinary. Tonight, it was entertainment, and everyone showed up. You arrive early because that is what people do when they care about getting a good spot. Executions are punctual only in theory. The waiting is part of it. The crowd gathers like it does for a fair, loose and chatty, carrying stools, bread, and opinions. Someone spreads a cloth on the ground as if preparing for a picnic. Someone else unwraps food that smells comforting in a way that feels inappropriate but effective. The platform waits ahead of you, solid and familiar, dressed up just enough to feel official. It has been cleaned recently, which is either considerate or unsettling depending on how long you think about it. You do not think about it long because someone nearby is already arguing about whether this execution will be quick. Bets are placed quietly, not on survival, that would be gauche, but on duration, composure, whether the condemned will speak. Children weave through legs chasing crumbs. Parents pretend not to notice until the moment a question is asked loudly. Then explanations arrive fast and simplified. This is justice. This is order. Finish your bread. The child nods and watches closely. When the condemned appears, the crowd shifts like a single animal adjusting its stance. Heads crane. Conversations pause mid-sentence, then resume softer, as if volume might influence outcome. The person looks smaller than expected, which draws disappointment, murmured politely. Someone says they expected more drama. Someone else says it is better this way. Commentary begins immediately. You hear assessments delivered with confidence. Guilty, obviously. Should have known better. My cousin once met him. He always looked shifty. Facts assemble themselves on the fly, arranging into a story that makes this moment feel earned. The executioner steps forward, and the crowd applauds lightly, out of habit more than enthusiasm. This is a professional courtesy. Someone critiques the outfit. Someone else praises last month's performance. Standards exist here, and they are discussed openly. As the proceedings begin, the atmosphere settles into something oddly festive. People eat. Someone offers you a bite of something fried, and you accept because refusing would feel rude. A man near you narrates every movement as if explaining a play to someone who arrived late. Now comes the speech. That is the prayer. Watch his hands. Always watch the hands. When the moment arrives, it does not explode. It lands. The sound is wrong. Too final. A few people gasp. A few cheer before correcting themselves. Someone laughs nervously and is shushed by a neighbor who insists on decorum despite having just spilled wine. You notice how quickly the crowd adapts. Shock fades. Analysis begins. Was it clean? Was it fair? Someone complains about visibility. Someone else says the angle was better from the left. A child asks why the man stopped moving. An adult answers with a metaphor that does not quite work. The body becomes scenery almost immediately. People talk around it, over it, through it. The executioner performs the final motions with practiced efficiency. Applause follows, scattered but sincere. The crowd appreciates closure. As things wrap up, conversations swell again. People debate whether the condemned deserved mercy. Someone brings up another case they thought was handled poorly. Someone jokes that this one should have been earlier so they could make it to supper on time. Laughter ripples. Relieved and unburdened, you realize the theater comparison is not metaphorical. There is pacing, audience engagement, and critique. People compare this execution to others they have seen. Rankings are implied. Preferences are declared. Memory turns death into a series. When the platform is cleared, the crowd disperses with surprising speed. Hunger returns. Children grow restless. Plans resume. The city exhales and moves on. You walk away with the noise of it still ringing in your ears. The snacks were good. The commentary was sharp. The ending was definitive. That is what people came for. You find them where the light is weakest and the shadows do most of the work. A corner of the square, a back room of a tavern, a lean-to built from borrowed wood and permanent mystery. Fortune tellers do not compete with daylight. They wait for it to leave. At night, truth softens and lies learn how to stretch. You sit across from one on a low stool that creaks like it wants to confess something. A candle flickers between you, doing most of the talking. The flame bends whenever someone breathes, which feels intentional. The fortune teller smiles in a way that suggests they already know why you are here, even if you do not. Around you, others wait quietly, pretending not to listen while absorbing every word. Night encourages eavesdropping. Everyone wants to hear their future described as someone else's problem. The air smells of wax, smoke, and whatever herb is currently pretending to be mystical. The fortune teller takes your hand with confidence, earned through repetition. They turn it slowly, nodding, as if your palm has been very busy. Lines are traced, paused over, reconsidered. Silence stretches just long enough to feel important. You begin to believe that if you spoke, something would go wrong. They start vague, a crossroads, a choice, a tension between what you want and what you accept. You nod because everyone nods. This is the part where agreement is required to keep the magic functioning. The candle flares as if on cue, and you wonder briefly if there is a draft or a signal. Cards are drawn, or bones are scattered, or a bowl of water is stared into until meaning appears. The method matters less than the delivery. The fortune teller leans closer, lowering their voice, because secrets demand proximity. They tell you something difficult, but survivable. They always do. You feel seen in a way that costs very little. They speak of obstacles that sound familiar and outcomes that sound flexible. Night helps here. Darkness forgives inconsistencies. Candlelight smooths rough edges. You would question this in the morning, but the morning is not invited. Someone nearby gasps softly. Their fortune has taken a turn. The fortune teller adapts instantly, steering away from disaster and toward lessons. Misfortune is reframed as opportunity wearing poor clothing. The listener exhales, relieved to have something to work with. You notice how often the fortune teller glances at reactions. They are excellent listeners disguised as prophets. Every nod, every flinch, every pause is cataloged and returned as insight. It feels personal because it is assembled on the spot. Coins clink softly as payment changes hands. No one argues about price. The value is emotional, not factual. You are paying for atmosphere, for the sensation that someone has briefly lifted the curtain and chosen not to laugh. Outside, the night thickens. Candles multiply. The future feels closer when you cannot see very far ahead. A passing bell rings, and someone crosses themselves mid-sentence, just in case. The fortune teller ends your session gently, as if waking you from a dream you paid to have. They offer advice that sounds like wisdom because it is impossible to disprove. Be patient. Watch for signs. Trust yourself more than others. You nod again. It feels right. As you stand, they add one final detail, unprompted. A warning or a reassurance, delivered casually, like an afterthought. This is the part that stays with you. This is the hook that keeps the candle burning long after you leave. You step away, and the stool creaks again, relieved. The next person sits quickly, eager to be told something that makes the waiting worthwhile. The fortune teller resets their tools, face settling back into that knowing expression. Walking into the darker street, you realize why they work only at night. Not because the future changes, but because belief does. Shadows invite imagination to participate. Candlelight asks fewer questions, and sometimes that is enough to make a lie feel like guidance. You are led there indirectly, because anything worth finding at night is never reached in a straight line. A knock that sounds wrong, a door that opens too easily, a staircase that descends farther than it should. Sellers are honest in the daytime. At night, they become negotiable. The air changes first, warmer, thicker, carrying the mixed scent of damp stone, spilled drink, and ambition. Someone takes your coat without asking and does not offer to remember where it went. Candles line the walls in uneven clusters, melting at different speeds like they arrived with separate expectations. The ceiling hangs low enough to make everyone stand closer together, which feels intentional. Music exists here, but only technically. A lute argues with a drum. Someone hums off key and calls it harmony. The sound bounces around the room until it stops resembling anything practiced. No one complains. Precision would ruin it. You realize quickly that rules have been left upstairs. Drinks are poured without measurement. Games begin without explanation. Conversations overlap and contradict themselves freely. Someone swears they were here last week. Someone else insists this place did not exist last week. Both feel correct. People dance badly and confidently, which is the only way dancing ever really works. Shoes slip on the stone floor. Someone bumps into you and apologizes with a grin that suggests this is the entire point. Laughter comes in waves, triggered by jokes that have lost their original meaning but kept their momentum. Illegal clubs like this survive on selective memory. Faces blur together in candlelight. Names are exchanged and forgotten in the same breath. What happens here is not exactly secret. It is simply uninterested in being recorded. A man near you claims to be a minor noble. A woman across the room claims to have seen him cleaning stables last month. They toast anyway. Status loosens its grip when the ceiling is low and the drinks are strong. You notice how everyone speaks slightly louder than necessary. Not to be heard, but to feel real. Night makes people unsure of their edges. Noise fills the gaps. Somewhere in the back, a game escalates. Coins appear, then disappear. Someone cheers prematurely. Someone else demands a rematch for reasons that are emotional, not logical. A candle is knocked over and caught before it can cause consequences. The room applauds the save like it was planned. The drinks taste inconsistent. One burns, one sweetens, one makes you question the wisdom of swallowing anything offered without explanation. No one asks what is in them. Curiosity would slow things down. You hear fragments of confessions that may or may not be sincere. The seller encourages honesty but does not enforce it. People say things they will half remember tomorrow and reinterpret generously. Memory here is flexible, cooperative. A pair of guards passes somewhere above. The music drops for half a breath, then resumes louder than before. Defiance feels safer when shared. Someone jokes that if they are caught, they will all claim to be praying. No one laughs too hard at that. Time behaves poorly underground. Minutes stretch. Hours fold. Someone announces it is very late. Someone else insists it is still early. Both are ignored. The night has decided to keep you. You begin to understand the appeal. In a world governed by daylight rules and public consequences, this seller offers plausible deniability. If you forget, it still happened. If you remember wrong, no one corrects you. At some point, the music stops because the musician has wandered off mid-song. Dancing continues anyway. The rhythm survives independently. Someone claps, someone stomps. The floor joins in. When you finally climb the stairs back into the night, the air feels thinner, less forgiving. The door closes quietly behind you, returning the cellar to rumor. You walk away carrying sounds that do not translate and faces that refuse to settle into clarity. Tomorrow, you will describe the place differently than anyone else who was there. That is how it stays hidden. You sit at a table scarred by generations of elbows and decisions that felt clever at the time. The board is placed between you like a challenge disguised as leisure. Someone explains the rules badly on purpose. Someone else corrects them with authority they have not earned. This is how the night begins. The pieces are simple. Wood, bone, stone, whatever survived long enough to be useful. They feel heavier than they should, weighted with meaning that only appears after you move the wrong one. You are told the goal. You are not told the shortcuts. Those are learned through loss. Around the table, faces tighten into polite seriousness. Games here are not casual. They are tests of patience, memory, and how well you tolerate being wrong in front of witnesses. Someone smiles too early. Someone else watches hands instead of the board. You realize quickly that strategy matters less than perception. The first moves are cautious. Everyone pretends they are thinking deeply when they are actually gauging personalities. Who rushes, who hesitates, who cannot resist commentary. You learn more from the pauses than the plays. Cheating arrives softly. A piece nudged when no one is looking. A rule reinterpreted mid-turn. A suggestion offered that benefits exactly one person. No one calls it out directly. Accusations would slow the game. Instead, grudges are planted quietly, like seeds that will be watered later. You make a move that seems safe, and immediately regret is replaced by suspicion. Someone laughs, not kindly. Someone says nothing, which is worse. The board has shifted and you are not sure how, but everyone else seems pleased. Games stretch. Drinks appear and disappear. The table becomes stickier. Someone insists the board was set up wrong. Someone else insists it was always this way. Memory becomes a weapon wielded by the confident. You notice alliances forming that have nothing to do with the game. Old slights resurface through play. A bad move from last winter is referenced casually, like it never stopped mattering. Someone sacrifices a piece not for advantage, but to inconvenience a rival. The table hums with personal history. Winning feels temporary. Losing feels instructional. Both are discussed loudly. Advice is offered after the fact with generous hindsight. If you had only seen that coming, you nod, because nodding costs less than arguing. At some point, the game changes without announcement. New rules appear because someone needs them. Old rules vanish because they are inconvenient. The board remains the same, but the agreement around it has evolved. This is not chaos. This is tradition. A dispute breaks out over a move that cannot be undone. Voices rise. Someone stands. Someone else reminds them this is just a game, which guarantees it is not. The room leans in. Resolution comes through compromise that satisfies no one but allows play to continue. You learn to watch for tells. A twitch before a bold move. A sigh before deception. The way someone reaches for their drink when cornered. Strategy becomes less about pieces and more about people. When someone finally wins, the victory is contested immediately. Explanations are demanded. The board is examined for flaws. Someone claims they would have won if not for an earlier injustice that has now grown in importance. The winner accepts congratulations cautiously, knowing favor is temporary. Another game begins, because stopping would require acknowledging feelings. Pieces are reset incorrectly. No one fixes it. The imbalance feels fair given the night. As the hours pass, grudges harden into jokes, and jokes sharpen into reminders. You understand why these games endure. They give structure to conflict. They allow anger to move safely across a board instead of a room. Eventually, the table empties. The board is abandoned mid-game, frozen in a state that will confuse whoever cleans it. You leave with a sense that something has been decided, even if you cannot say what. Medieval board games are not about winning. They are about remembering who made you lose and why it still matters by candlelight. You are invited the way secrets usually are, indirectly and with a test attached. Someone mentions a meeting that never happens during the day. Someone else asks if you sleep well. This is not concern. This is screening. The society does not have a name that survives repetition. It changes depending on who is speaking and how much candle smoke is in their lungs. What it does have is a shared purpose, staying awake long after the city pretends it is finished. Sleep is treated like surrender. Night is treated like a resource that must be used fully before it expires. You meet in places chosen for their inconvenience, an unused loft above a granary, a chapel side room no one locks because no one remembers it exists, a courtyard that echoes just enough to feel watched. The location shifts often, partly for secrecy and partly because novelty keeps the eyes open. The first rule is never stated, but you feel it immediately. No one asks why you are tired. Complaints invite solutions, and solutions lead to beds. Instead, exhaustion is worn like a badge. Someone boasts about how little rest they have taken. Someone else claims sleep makes them dull. The group nods in approval. They begin with rituals that sound important, but achieve very little. A shared drink passed around clockwise, a phrase spoken together that loses coherence by the third repetition. These are not mystical acts. They are anchors, something to hold on to when the night stretches thin. Conversation here is erratic and enthusiastic. Ideas leap without permission. Theories are proposed and abandoned within minutes. Someone outlines a plan to change everything. Someone else points out a flaw, and everyone agrees it was doomed anyway. The point is not success. The point is momentum. You notice how carefully they schedule activities to resist drowsiness. standing debates instead of seated ones, games that require constant participation, sudden changes in topic delivered like jolts. If someone yawns, they are given a task immediately. No one is allowed to drift. Stories circulate about members who fell asleep once and were never quite trusted again. These stories change details nightly, growing darker, more cautionary. Whether they are true is irrelevant. Fear is an effective stimulant. Laughter erupts often and without warning. Jokes are half-formed but delivered with confidence. Timing matters less than volume. Silence is treated as dangerous. If a pause lingers, someone fills it with nonsense, gossip, or an unsolicited confession. Anything is better than quiet. You realize that this is not rebellion against sleep. It is anxiety wearing organization. Night brings thoughts that daylight keeps busy. The society exists to outrun them together. Alone, insomnia feels like a problem. Here, it feels like participation. As the hours deepen, discussions grow philosophical and then collapse back into trivia. Someone debates the nature of time. Someone else interrupts to argue about bread. Both feel equally urgent. The candle stubs shorten. No one replaces them until absolutely necessary, as if conserving light might also conserve alertness. There is always a lookout, officially or not. Someone positioned near a window. Someone listening for footsteps. Discovery would not be disastrous, but it would end the night. And ending the night early is the only real failure here. You catch moments where fatigue softens faces. Eyes glaze briefly, then sharpen. People stretch, pace, slap their own cheeks lightly. The group notices and adjusts, raising voices, introducing movement, challenging each other to pointless contests. The night must be actively resisted. Near what might be dawn, the society fractures gently. People drift off in twos and threes, satisfied that they have outlasted something unnamed. No farewell is formal. Goodbyes are murmured, unfinished, as if sleep might overhear. You step outside, with the sky lightening reluctantly. The streets feel different after a night spent denying rest. Your body disagrees with your choices. Your mind hums anyway. Secret societies like this do not exist to accomplish anything lasting. They exist to prove that sleep is optional, and that exhaustion shared feels almost like victory. You hear them before you see them, because vows are quieter than their violations. The monastery sleeps officially, but unofficially, it hums like a hive pretending to be empty. You follow the sound through a side door that sticks, down a corridor that smells like wax and boiled vegetables, toward a room no one labels, because labeling would make it real. The monks sit in a loose circle, robes loosened, feet bare, expressions relieved. Candlelight pools on stone and turns everyone older and younger at the same time. Someone passes a jug that is not supposed to be here. Someone blesses it jokingly, which somehow makes it feel worse and better. They greet you with nods that say, "You are not the first outsider and will not be the last." Night relaxes, rules the way. Warmth relaxes wax. One monk clears his throat and announces that this is not sin, it is recreation. Another adds that intention matters. A third shrugs and pours anyway. They talk about the day first, because daylight must be processed before anything else can happen. Complaints slip out disguised as observations. The soup was thin. The abbot lingered. The bell rang early. Everyone listens with exaggerated seriousness, nodding as if these grievances are theological puzzles. Then the stories begin, because stories are how vows bend without snapping. Someone confesses to enjoying a hymn too much. Someone else admits to missing a former life with alarming detail. Laughter spreads carefully, stopping short of disrespect, but edging close enough to feel thrilling. A monk with kind eyes produces a small instrument from his sleeve like a magic trick practiced too often. He plays something lively and entirely inappropriate. Feet tap, shoulders sway. No one sings at first, then everyone does, quietly, inventing lyrics that flirt with blasphemy and retreat just in time. You notice how they frame everything as relief. This is to let the spirit breathe. This is to keep discipline strong. This is preventative. Recreation becomes a word that absorbs guilt efficiently. Night agrees with them. Night has always been generous with excuses. The jug comes back around. Someone tells a joke that would get them extra prayers if heard by daylight. It lands well. Someone nearly snorts and covers it with a cough that fools no one. The laughter feels like a held breath finally released. They debate rules with academic enthusiasm. Which vows are flexible, which are symbolic, which were meant for other people. Arguments remain friendly because the goal is consensus, not absolution. Someone wins a point and is immediately teased for caring too much. You realize that breaking vows together feels safer than keeping them alone. Shared mischief becomes community service. If everyone bends, no one breaks. This logic is delivered with smiles and more music. A monk near you admits he looks forward to these nights more than he should. He says it like a weather report. Another monk pats his shoulder and says that longing is human, which is a versatile phrase that solves many problems. The candle flickers approvingly. Outside, a bell marks an hour no one acknowledges. Inside, time loosens. Someone suggests a game that involves guessing which psalm line was misquoted. Someone else counters with a contest to invent the worst possible sermon theme. The winner is decided by groans. They speak fondly of discipline, even as they ignore it. Respect remains intact. This is not rebellion. It is maintenance. They believe it sincerely. You almost do too. As the night thins, the room grows quieter. Music slows. The jug empties. Faces soften into something reflective. Someone says they will feel this tomorrow. Someone else says tomorrow has its own tools. The conversation drifts towards silence without fear. When they rise, robes are adjusted carefully, as if to reassure the fabric. Candles are snuffed one by one, darkness stepping in politely. The room returns to being unremarkable. You leave with them into the corridor, footsteps light, voices low. By morning, the monastery will look intact. Vows will be visible again, clean and impressive. After dark, they were recreational. You enter the graveyard the way everyone does, pretending you are not impressed by how quiet it suddenly feels. The gate complains softly, which earns you a glare from someone who takes bravery very seriously. Torches are discouraged, lanterns tolerated, moonlight preferred. Darkness is part of the test. If you wanted safety, you would have stayed home and argued near a fire. The air smells different here, damp and old, like patience with nowhere to go. Stones lean at angles that suggest exhaustion rather than menace. Names fade, dates blur, and the ground dips unpredictably under your feet. Someone whispers a warning about roots. Someone else whispers something much worse and refuses to explain. Dares begin immediately, because standing still invites thoughts. The rules are simple and absolutely negotiable. Touch a headstone, walk to the far yew tree, stand alone between the older graves, and count slowly. Each challenge is delivered with a grin that suggests no one expects you to succeed, which somehow makes failure unacceptable. You watch someone go first, puffed up with confidence that thins by the second step. Their footsteps sound too loud. Everyone listens carefully, counting breaths instead of numbers. When they return, pale and triumphant, the group applauds softly. Victory here is survival without screaming. Someone swears they heard movement. The group freezes, then relaxes when a cat appears, offended by the attention. Laughter spills out, sharp and relieved. Fear is more fun when it has a punchline. You are dared next. Of course, the path is indicated vaguely, as if accuracy might help you. You walk because refusing would follow you longer than any ghost story. The grass whispers underfoot. The stones watch. If stones can watch. You count slowly, forgetting numbers and starting over. Halfway through, you realize the silence is not empty. It hums with expectation. Every sound feels intentional, every shadow curious. You finish the count anyway and touch the stone because the dare requires proof. It is colder than you expect, which feels unfair. When you turn back, the group looks farther away than before. Distance behaves strangely here. You take a step and hear something behind you that might be wind or might be narrative. You do not turn around immediately because courage has pacing. You return to the group greeted by quiet approval. Someone claps once. Someone calls you brave, which feels temporary. The next dare is already forming. Stories surface between challenges. Tales of figures seen moving where no one walks. Graves found disturbed for reasons that are never clarified. Everyone claims to know someone who knows someone who did not make it back the same. Details change nightly. The fear remains consistent. You notice how the graveyard becomes a stage. Shadows are assigned roles. Trees become accomplices. Even the moon participates, sliding in and out of cloud cover with theatrical timing. Someone swears they saw a face in the stone. Someone else insists it winked. The dares escalate because repetition dulls fear. Stand between two graves with matching dates. Lie flat and listen. Say a name aloud and wait. Each task is accepted with laughter that arrives slightly too late. At one point, someone refuses. The group reacts kindly, which somehow feels worse. Fear is allowed. It is even admired. The only unacceptable thing is pretending not to feel it. You sit on a low wall at the edge, watching bravado cycle through the group. Faces look younger in moonlight, older in shadow. This place equalizes everyone. Titles fade. Confidence cracks. Everyone is just another visitor hoping the ground stays quiet. A sudden noise sends everyone scattering a step or two, then back together, embarrassed and laughing. Someone swears it was nothing. Someone else says that is what it always starts as. Eventually, the night loosens its grip. The dares feel less sharp. The stories lose urgency. Someone mentions the hour like it matters. The group drifts toward the gate, glancing back too often. You leave without looking over your shoulder one last time, because if you do, it might look back. You arrive just after sunset, because rituals prefer anticipation. The circle is already marked on the ground with chalk, salt, ash, or whatever was nearby and convincing. No one agrees on the material. Everyone agrees it works. Torches are planted unevenly, flickering like they are unsure whose side they are on. This is introduced to you as a game, which is comforting until you notice how seriously everyone treats the rules. The goal, you are told, is protection, warding, keeping bad things out. The method involves chanting phrases no one fully understands, drawing symbols that look borrowed from several traditions at once, and daring each other to step closer to the center than feels wise. Someone explains that demons respect confidence. Someone else explains they respect structure. A third says they respect nothing, and that is why the game is important. You nod at the appropriate intervals. Agreement is another layer of defense. The ritual begins with laughter, because starting solemn would feel like an invitation. Jokes are cracked about who would be possessed first. Bets are placed quietly. The group forms a loose ring, hands not quite touching, because touching would be too intimate for something this dangerous. Chants start unevenly and grow louder as people find the rhythm. Words stretch and blur, syllables repeated until meaning dissolves into sound. You feel silly and powerful at the same time, which seems to be the desired state. The ground feels colder inside the circle. Someone points this out. Someone else says it always does. The game element emerges when challenges are issued. Step into the center and call your name. Spin 3 times and stop where you land. Close your eyes and listen. Each task is framed as a test of courage and faith, which makes refusal feel like a personal flaw rather than a sensible choice. You watch someone enter the circle confidently and exit pale, swearing they felt something brush past them. The group reacts with excitement carefully disguised as concern. That counts, someone says. It means the warding is working. Symbols are redrawn when they smudge. Salt is reapplied generously. Someone insists on correcting the chant's pronunciation, claiming accuracy matters. Someone else argues intention matters more. The debate is resolved by chanting louder. You notice how often people glance into the darkness beyond the torches. The ritual is supposed to keep things out, but attention drifts outward anyway. Curiosity leaks through every rule. At one point, the game escalates into a contest. Who can stay in the center longest? Who can insult the unseen without flinching? Who can laugh the loudest at nothing? Bravery is measured by proximity and volume. You take your turn because that is how these nights work. The center feels exposed, like standing on a stage no one admits exists. You say the words you were given. They taste old. The air feels thicker for a moment, then ordinary again. The group cheers softly, relieved to have another success. Someone claims they heard a response. Someone else insists it was the wind. The distinction feels academic. Torches flicker harder. A dog barks somewhere distant and everyone jumps, then laughs too loudly. The ritual continues longer than planned because stopping feels like failure. Games are repeated with variations. Rules shift to accommodate fatigue. Protection becomes performance. Performance becomes dare. You realize the contradiction too late. Every chant meant to repel also describes. Every symbol meant to block also maps. The circle is a diagram, and diagrams explain how to arrive. Someone drops a torch. It is recovered quickly, but the moment lingers. A silence spreads that no one wants. Then someone claps, breaking it, and the chant resumes with renewed urgency. When the ritual finally ends, there is no clear signal. People drift back from the circle, checking themselves subtly, counting limbs, testing voices. The ground looks unchanged. The night looks interested. As you leave, someone jokes that if anything followed you home, it would at least make the story better. Laughter answers, brittle but sincere. You walk away feeling protected and exposed in equal measure, which is exactly how invitations work. You notice the games before you notice the hands. Dice clatter, cards shuffle. Tokens slide across a table that has already witnessed worse decisions. Everything looks innocent enough if you keep your eyes level and your expectations low. Night games always start that way, with rules that seem harmless and outcomes that pretend not to matter. Lovers arrive separately and pretend coincidence. They take seats across from each other, never beside, because proximity would be too obvious. Glances are exchanged only when someone laughs, only when the group noise covers intention. The game provides cover. Everyone is watching the table. No one is watching the table. The rules are explained loudly for the benefit of anyone who needs to hear them. Draw a card, roll once, trade places if you lose. The penalties are small at first. A sip, a forfeit, a compliment delivered publicly. Someone suggests an adjustment to make it more interesting. Someone else agrees too quickly. The rules evolve like they always do, bending toward opportunity. You see how the night helps. Shadows soften faces. Candlelight blurs details that daylight would catalog. Touches are accidental. Knees brush under tables with plausible deniability. Apologies come quickly and are never necessary. The game escalates because boredom demands it. Losers must switch seats. Winners choose partners. Someone suggests pairs. Someone objects weakly and is overruled by enthusiasm. The table rearranges itself with remarkable efficiency. Lovers find themselves suddenly adjacent, startled by convenience. Laughter grows louder. The penalties become performative. Whisper a secret. Tell a story you should not. Remove something symbolic. Shoes come off. Cloaks are loosened. The crowd cheers each small surrender, pretending it is about the game and not the slow collapse of restraint. You notice how scandal wears humor like armor. Every risky moment is followed by a joke, as if laughter can erase memory. It does not, but it helps everyone pretend. Someone's hand lingers too long when passing a token. Someone else does not pull away. The table reacts with exaggerated interest in the dice. Everyone understands the unspoken agreement. See nothing, say nothing. Enjoy the tension. The lovers play badly on purpose now. Loss becomes strategy. Penalties are accepted eagerly. Each forfeit brings them closer, excuses stacking neatly. If questioned tomorrow, they will blame the rules. The rules are flexible enough to absorb blame. You hear whispers that sound like commentary on the game but are not. Nice move. Careful now. Your turn. The words carry weight that has nothing to do with cards. At some point, someone outside the pair notices. An eyebrow lifts. A smile spreads. Scandal requires witnesses. Without them, it is just affection. The witness does not interfere. They encourage. A suggestion is made to raise the stakes again. Now the penalties involve leaving the table briefly, fetching something from another room, demonstrating bravery in a dark corner. Partners are assigned with theatrical randomness. The lovers disappear together under the pretense of competition. The room fills the gap with noise. When they return, flushed and rearranged, no one comments directly. Applause greets them anyway. The game resumes with new energy, as if something important has been achieved. You realize these games are not designed to prevent scandal. They are designed to stage it. They provide a script where desire can move without claiming authorship. Night games let people say they were carried along, that it just happened, that everyone was laughing. As the night deepens, alliances shift openly. Someone else pairs off. Someone pretends not to care. The table grows messier. Rules are abandoned entirely. The game continues out of habit rather than structure. Eventually, the lovers leave separately again, careful to restore the illusion. Promises are exchanged quietly. Plans are made that pretend not to be plans. Tomorrow will carry consequences. Tonight carries applause. You sit back and understand the genius of it. In a world obsessed with appearances, night games offer camouflage, desire dressed as play, scandal disguised as entertainment. Everyone knows exactly what is happening, and everyone agrees to keep playing. You learn quickly that pranks begin with laughter and end with paperwork, or blood, or a knock on the door that sounds different from friendly knocking. At night, the line between joke and offense thins until it feels theoretical. People start smiling before they start thinking, which is how trouble gets invited inside. It always begins small. A bucket balanced above a doorway. A sign swapped for another sign pointing nowhere useful. A shout from behind followed by running feet and breathless pride. The group laughs hard, congratulating itself on cleverness. No harm done, they say, which is a phrase that ages badly. Night encourages escalation. Silence dares you to fill it. Darkness forgives poor planning. Someone suggests going bigger because the first laugh fades too fast. Someone else agrees because restraint feels like admitting fear. The prank grows teeth quietly. You follow them because everyone does. Being the one who stays behind marks you as dull, and dullness is a social crime all its own. Torches are hidden, faces are half covered, names become optional. Responsibility loosens its grip. The target is chosen casually. A shopkeeper known for complaining, a guard rumored to nap, a neighbor who once laughed at the wrong time. Grievances are repackaged as humor. Revenge learns to smile. The plan is described with confidence that exceeds its quality. Someone assures everyone it will be quick. Someone else swears they have done this before. No one asks how it ended last time. When it happens fast. A door is forced. A window breaks louder than expected. Something inside crashes that was not supposed to move. Laughter stutters but continues out of momentum. Someone whispers that it is fine, which convinces no one. Then a voice shouts, real and alarmed. The tone shifts instantly. Jokes evaporate, feet scramble. The night, once playful, tightens its grip. This is the moment pranks reveal their true nature. You run with them because stopping would be worse. Behind you, anger gathers. Someone calls for help. Someone calls a name. The sound carries farther than laughter ever did. The group scatters poorly. Plans dissolve. One person trips. Another hesitates, torn between loyalty and self-preservation. Choices are made quickly and remembered later. The joke is officially over. You hide in a doorway, chest loud, listening to boots pass. The city sounds different now, sharper, less amused. Somewhere nearby, someone is counting losses and deciding who to blame. By morning, the story will be told carefully. It was just a prank. Things got out of hand. No one meant for it to happen. Language works over time to soften edges. Sometimes it succeeds. Other times, it does not. Guards arrive. Questions are asked. Witnesses remember selectively. Someone points. Someone denies. The night no longer protects anyone. You learn that medieval law has little patience for humor without permission. Intentions matter less than outcomes. Damage is damage. Fear is fear. A prank that breaks property breaks peace. A joke that draws blood draws consequences. Families become involved. Employers frown. Priests sigh heavily. The community that laughed together now measures distance carefully. Names circulate with new weight. Invitations stop arriving. The worst part is how everyone knew this might happen. The warnings were built into the laughter. Every joke carried a pause where someone could have stopped. No one did. Next night, another group gathers somewhere else. Someone retells the story with embellishments. Lessons are extracted and ignored. The thrill remains. The risk sharpens it. You understand now why elders complain about night behavior. Not because it is fun, but because it refuses to stay fun. Darkness accelerates everything. Humor sprints. Consequences jog patiently behind. Pranks are how people test boundaries. Crimes are what happens when boundaries respond. And the night never testifies in your favor. You join the procession at the edge, because that is where all sensible people begin. Torches bob ahead like a migrating constellation that forgot where it was going. Someone hands you a flame without asking your name, and suddenly you are responsible for fire in a crowd that treats responsibility as a rumor. Torchlight festivals are explained as tradition. That explanation is offered early and often, usually by people already doing something questionable. This honors the old ways. This keeps spirits away. This brings the community together. All of these statements coexist comfortably with shouting, drinking, and the sound of something breaking 2 streets over. The march moves forward unevenly. No one keeps time. No one leads for long. Someone starts a chant that collapses into laughter halfway through. Someone else adds a drum beat that has nothing to do with the chant. The chaos feels earned, like it passed a test. You notice how quickly order dissolves once fire is involved. Faces glow and distort. Shadows grow ambitious. A torch held too low singes a cloak and earns applause instead of concern. Minor disasters are treated as features. Stalls line the streets, selling food that should not be eaten while walking and drinks that should not be mixed with enthusiasm. You eat anyway because everyone else is. Grease and ash mingle on your fingers. It feels festive and faintly irresponsible. The festival swells as it moves. People pour out of doorways, drawn by noise and light. Children dart between legs, fearless and sticky. Elders watch from thresholds, shaking their heads while smiling despite themselves. Disapproval is ceremonial tonight. Games appear spontaneously. Toss the torch end to end without dropping it. Jump the small fire before it grows. Guess how long before someone sets something important alight. Cheers accompany every near miss. The crowd learns collectively how close it can get to disaster without committing. Music competes from multiple directions. Lutes argue. Pipes shriek. Voices rise and fall without coordination. The sound becomes a wall you lean into. Individual mistakes vanish inside it. You see how the festival provides cover. Arguments flare and resolve quickly. A shove is forgiven because the night is loud. A kiss is stolen because everyone is watching something else. Grudges are aired under the protection of celebration and then shelved again, at least until morning. Someone claims this part of the route is sacred. Someone else claims it is cursed. Both claims justify louder behavior. Torches are raised higher. Shadows leap across buildings like they want to join. At the center of it all, a bonfire grows from contributions made impulsively. Broken crates, old furniture, something recognizable but no longer claimed. Each offering earns cheers. The fire accepts everything without judgment. You circle it with the others, heat pushing back against the cool night. Sweat forms, faces flush. Someone dances too close and is pulled back by friends laughing nervously. The line between bravery and foolishness flickers like flame. Rules are announced and immediately broken. Stay together. Do not throw torches. Mind the children. Each rule lasts seconds. Enforcement is abandoned in favor of momentum. As the night deepens, chaos becomes the point rather than the side effect. People who behave all year finally have permission to misbehave publicly. People who misbehave regularly enjoy the camouflage. Everyone finds their place. A guard watches from a distance, choosing battles carefully. Intervention would require explaining why this moment matters more than tradition. Tradition is a powerful shield when waved enthusiastically. You realize the festival exists to burn off excess, anger, energy, resentment. Fire consumes it symbolically so it does not have to be addressed directly. Tomorrow, things will look mostly the same. Tonight, they get to be loud. When the torches finally gutter and the crowd thins, the streets are littered with evidence. Wax drips, charred wood, lost shoes. Laughter echoes faintly, refusing to leave all at once. You step away with smoke in your hair and a sense that something important was accomplished, though no one could say what. The chaos did its job by existing. Torchlight festivals justify themselves by surviving, and everyone agrees that is reason enough. You hear the laughter before you understand the joke, and that is usually how it works. Medieval humor does not warm up. It ambushes. It arrives loud, crude, and confident that you will catch up eventually. If you do not, that becomes funny too. The crowd gathers where the noise is thickest. Someone has climbed onto a barrel. Someone else has been volunteered as a prop. The humor here feeds on visibility. The more people watching, the sharper it gets. Privacy would ruin everything. The jokes begin with bodies. They almost always do. Someone's posture, someone's limp, someone's unfortunate face that looks especially unfortunate by torchlight. Laughter erupts immediately, relieved to have a target. The person laughs along because not laughing would make it worse. Participation is protection. You notice how little subtlety survives at night. Nuance is a daylight luxury. Here, humor prefers volume and repetition. Insults are shouted, echoed, improved, then shouted again. Each iteration strips away restraint. Cleverness earns respect, but cruelty earns applause faster. Someone tells a story that ends with humiliation. The details are exaggerated. Names are implied loudly enough to be recognized. The crowd roars. Someone wipes tears from their eyes, moved by comedy or exhaustion. It is hard to tell. Physical humor escalates quickly. Someone trips, and the laughter hits before they do. Someone pretends to help and makes it worse. The crowd loves a sequence. Pain followed by embarrassment followed by commentary is the preferred structure. You realize that medieval humor does not punch up or down. It punches nearest. Authority is mocked only when it is safe to do so. Weakness is mocked whenever it presents itself. Equality is achieved through indiscriminate targeting. Obscenity is treated like seasoning. The dirtier the better, as long as it lands. Jokes about sex, bodily functions, and faith collide freely. Nothing is sacred enough to be spared entirely. Someone makes a joke that crosses a line and the crowd pauses, then laughs anyway because the pause itself became part of the joke. You hear laughter that sounds cruel because it is. You also hear laughter that sounds grateful. Humor here releases pressure. It lets people say what they think under the disguise of fun. The disguise is thin but effective. A performer appears, half comedian, half instigator. They insult the crowd deliberately, daring someone to respond. A man shouts back and is immediately incorporated into the routine. The performer dissects him joyfully, turning his haircut into a metaphor that survives several verses. The crowd howls. The man bows. His dignity is gone, but he has been included. Dark humor thrives because death is never far away. Jokes about sickness land harder when sickness is common. Jokes about execution land because everyone has seen one. Laughter becomes a way to touch fear without letting it win. Someone jokes about a recent tragedy. The timing feels wrong. The delivery is perfect. The crowd laughs and then looks around to see if it was allowed. It was. Permission granted retroactively. You catch yourself laughing at something you would condemn in daylight. The sound surprises you. The night shrugs. Context matters. So does survival. As the humor peaks, it turns almost feral. Voices overlap. Insults lose direction. The crowd feeds itself. Someone shouts something incoherent, and it becomes hilarious through repetition alone. Meaning is optional. Momentum is everything. Eventually, the laughter burns itself out. Throats ache. Faces hurt. The jokes repeat too often and lose their edge. Someone tries to revive it with a final insult, and it lands flat. The crowd senses the ending and begins to drift. You step away feeling lighter and slightly ashamed. Medieval humor does not ask permission. It takes relief wherever it can find it. Loud, dark, and unapologetic. It laughs because tomorrow will be serious again. You notice the children first because no one is watching them. They move through the night like it belongs to them, slipping between legs, ducking under tables, climbing things that were never meant to be climbed. No one calls their name in warning tones. No one counts heads. The assumption is simple and terrifying. If they are still breathing, they are fine. They carry sticks that have become swords, torches that are only occasionally lit, and secrets they should not have learned yet. A boy runs past you with a grin too wide for his face, pursued by another child shrieking in delight. The shriek echoes off stone and earns laughter from nearby adults who do not look up from their drinks. Children are included because excluding them would require effort. Nighttime fun is communal by default. If you can walk and shout, you qualify. Someone hands a child a cup and only realizes too late it is not water. The child grimaces, hands it back proudly, and earns applause for bravery. You watch a group of them gather near a storyteller, sitting close enough to feel the heat of the fire. They listen harder than the adults, eyes wide, absorbing every warning disguised as entertainment. When the story turns frightening, they lean in instead of away. Fear learned early feels like a skill. Elsewhere, children mimic the adults with alarming accuracy. They gamble with pebbles. They insult each other in sing-song voices. They invent dares that involve climbing walls and jumping gaps measured poorly. A scraped knee is treated like proof of participation. Blood is wiped away and forgotten. No one supervises because everyone supervises. Any nearby adult will shout if a child gets too close to flame or blade. Otherwise, the night is considered a reasonable teacher. Pain is feedback. Embarrassment is correction. You see a child watching a fight with intense focus, not cheering, not flinching. An adult notices and explains nothing. Exposure is considered preparation. The world is dangerous. Better to learn that when surrounded by noise and neighbors. Children drift in and out of games freely. They are included until they are bored. Then they wander off to find something louder. Someone yells at them to get out of the way. Someone else hands them food. Authority here is inconsistent but plentiful. A group of children start a game involving chasing shadows. They assign monsters to alleys and argue over rules that change mid-sprint. Laughter spills into the street, drawing more participants. The game grows without permission. You realize how quickly children adapt to night logic. They understand that rules bend, that adults are distracted, that chaos offers opportunities. They learn when to disappear and when to perform. They learn which spaces are safe because no one claims them. A child climbs onto a barrel and begins repeating jokes heard earlier, stripping them of subtlety and replacing it with volume. The crowd roars approval. The child bows. Encouragement arrives early here, before judgment can sharpen. When a child cries, the reaction is swift but brief. Someone scoops them up. Someone distracts them with a story or sweet. Tears dry quickly in company. Lingering sadness would interrupt the evening. You see parents nearby, present but unbothered. They watch with half an eye, trusting the crowd to absorb risk. Children belong to the night as much as anyone else. Perhaps more, they have fewer reasons to fear consequences. As the night deepens, the children grow bolder. They sneak closer to forbidden spaces. They eavesdrop shamelessly. They repeat words they should not know and are corrected only for pronunciation. Knowledge arrives without filters. Eventually, fatigue claims them one by one. Some curl up near fires. Some are carried home by neighbors. Some simply vanish into doorways without announcement. No roll call is taken. The assumption remains optimistic. You understand then that medieval nighttime fun does not pause for childhood. Childhood is folded into it, shaped by it, and released back into daylight tougher and louder. Innocence is not preserved here. It is repurposed. The night teaches early and often, and the children learn faster than anyone else. You notice how carefully it begins. No one mocks authority outright. Not yet. The sun has to leave first. Respect lasts until dusk like a curfew everyone pretends not to notice. Once the light fades, backs straighten less, and voices loosen their grip on caution. It starts with jokes that sound harmless if you do not listen closely. Someone imitates a guard's walk, exaggerating the stiffness until it becomes a shuffle. Laughter ripples, quick and contained. Another person copies a noble's voice, stretching syllables until meaning collapses. The crowd enjoys the accuracy almost as much as the insult. Authority is safest to mock when it is absent. Names are not spoken. Titles are implied. Everyone understands who is being referenced, which is part of the pleasure. The humor lives in shared recognition. If you have to explain it, the moment is already lost. You see how the night provides cover. Shadows blur faces. Noise stacks up. If someone overhears, It can be denied easily. Just a joke, just a song, just too much drink. Intent dissolves in darkness. Someone begins a song with a familiar tune and unfamiliar words. The lyrics praise obedience for exactly one verse, then twist sharply. The chorus lands harder each time it is repeated. Laughter grows louder with every round, fed by the thrill of saying what daylight forbids. People watch the street while they laugh, eyes flicking toward corners and doorways. Mockery here is athletic. It requires awareness. Timing matters. You learn when to lower your voice and when to shout, because shouting hides you better than whispers ever could. A performer steps forward, emboldened by applause. They tell a story about a foolish ruler who cannot tell his servants apart. The details are fictional enough to deny and specific enough to sting. The crowd roars. Someone claps too hard. Someone else hushes them reflexively, then laughs at themselves. You realize the jokes are not just funny, they are corrective. They flatten power briefly, reminding everyone that authority is human and therefore mockable. For a moment, the world feels adjustable. Someone pushes further than expected. An insult sharpens. The laughter catches, then surges back stronger. The risk amplifies the reward. Fear flavors the humor. You notice how mocking authority becomes a group activity quickly. Solo defiance is dangerous. Collective laughter feels safer. If everyone laughs, no one can be singled out easily. The crowd becomes armor. Gestures join the words. Someone mimics a bow so deep it becomes a stumble. Someone pretends to write laws on an invisible scroll, then drops it into imaginary mud. Physical comedy lands hardest when it pretends to be accidental. Children watch from the edges, absorbing the lesson. Authority is real. Authority is fragile. The contradiction is not explained, it is demonstrated. A sudden silence sweeps the group when footsteps approach. Everyone freezes mid-laugh, faces rearranging into innocence. A guard passes without stopping. Breath releases in a wave. The laughter returns, sharper now, charged with survival. You understand why this only happens at night. Daylight enforces hierarchy through visibility. Night rearranges it through anonymity. Mockery thrives when faces are harder to read and consequences feel negotiable. The jokes grow bolder as the hour deepens. Someone invents a game where titles are reassigned absurdly. A baker becomes king. A drunk becomes judge. Everyone bows dramatically. The inversion feels delicious and temporary. Eventually, fatigue dulls the edge. The jokes repeat. The laughter softens. People drift away, satisfied. The power structure reassembles itself quietly, untouched but slightly dented. You walk away knowing that nothing has changed and everything has. Authority will return with the sun, polished and unquestioned. But for a few hours, it was laughed at, and that mattered. Mockery does not overthrow anything here. It just reminds everyone that it could. You notice it in the sound first. Night laughter carries differently. It travels farther than it should, slipping through alleys and over walls like it knows it is not supposed to be there. Daytime laughter is permitted, expected even. But night laughter feels sharper, less apologetic. It does not ask if it is allowed. In daylight, everything has a place. Work, prayer, meals, silence. Laughter fits neatly into approved spaces, polite and brief. At night, those boundaries loosen, and laughter spills out where it was never scheduled. That alone makes it dangerous. You stand among people laughing too loudly at something that is not especially funny. The joke barely matters. What matters is the volume, the timing, the shared understanding that this moment exists outside permission. The sound feels earned, like trespassing successfully. Night laughter often starts as relief. The day is done. No one is counting your hours anymore. Muscles unclench. Faces rearrange themselves into something closer to honesty. Someone says something foolish, and instead of correcting them, the group laughs. Correction belongs to daylight. You realize how controlled the society is only when you feel it lift slightly. Rules have been guiding hands all day, invisible but firm. At night, those hands loosen their grip, and laughter rushes in to fill the space. It feels like oxygen after a long hold. People laugh at the wrong things. Misfortune, authority, the absurdity of rules everyone follows automatically. A mistake that would earn punishment by day earns applause now. Laughter rewrites meaning temporarily. Failure becomes entertainment. Fear becomes a story. You hear laughter erupt after a risky joke lands. The pause beforehand is electric. Everyone waits to see if it is acceptable. When it is, the release is enormous. The sound is not just joy. It is defiance, disguised as amusement. Night laughter bonds people quickly. Shared risk accelerates intimacy. Laughing together at something forbidden creates an instant alliance. You may never speak again, but for that moment, you are on the same side of something. Someone laughs too hard and too long, and instead of being shushed, they are joined. The sound grows, feeding itself. It is not mocking anything specific. It is mocking restraint itself. You see how guards and officials respond to night laughter with suspicion. They do not need to hear the joke to know it is a problem. Laughter after dark suggests independence. It suggests people are comfortable without instruction. In a controlled society, comfort is meant to be rationed. Laughter ignores rationing. It arrives in bursts, uneven and difficult to contain. Once it starts, it spreads faster than orders ever could. You catch yourself laughing louder than intended. The sound startles you. It feels exposed and thrilling. For a brief moment, you are aware of yourself as someone not performing obedience, just breathing and reacting and existing without purpose. Night laughter often carries an edge of exhaustion. People laugh because they are tired of holding themselves together. The humor is crude because refinement requires energy. Darkness forgives that. Someone laughs at a joke that would be dangerous by day. No one corrects them. The laughter absorbs the risk. If everyone laughs, responsibility dissolves. It becomes communal instead of individual. You notice how laughter changes posture. Shoulders drop, spines curve, people lean closer, hierarchies soften. The sound pulls everyone onto the same level, if only briefly. The rebellion is subtle. No banners, no speeches, just sound, just shared recognition that for a few hours, control does not have absolute authority. The night cannot rewrite laws, but it can mock them gently. As the laughter fades, something remains. A residue of courage, a memory of looseness. Tomorrow, people will move carefully again. They will watch their words. They will obey. But tonight, laughter proved that obedience is learned, not natural. And that knowledge lingers longer than the joke ever could. You feel it sometime after midnight. The strange confidence that comes from staying awake too long. Sleep becomes a suggestion instead of a command. Your body complains quietly at first, then gives up trying to be persuasive. The night feels wide open, like an opportunity you would be foolish not to use. Everyone around you seems to agree. Eyes are glassy but determined, movements slow but intentional. Someone declares they are not tired at all, which is never true and always contagious. Another person insists the night is still young, even though it is clearly old and irritable. No one challenges this. Challenging it would require admitting weakness. You notice how staying awake becomes a badge of honor. The longer you last, the more impressive it sounds when you say it later. I was up all night. We watched the sky change. We never even sat down. These statements carry weight in a culture that equates endurance with virtue. Sleep is treated like quitting early, like missing the best part. People warn you that if you lie down now, you will miss something important. They never specify what. Importance is implied, vague, and irresistible. You push through the heaviness behind your eyes. You laugh at jokes that would not work under better conditions. You agree to things you would question tomorrow. The night rewards you immediately with a sense of belonging. You are still here. You did not leave. That counts. Time stretches oddly. Minutes blur together. Conversations loop. Stories repeat with slight variations. You lose track of how long you have been standing in the same place. Sitting feels dangerous. Sitting leads to stopping. Someone mentions dawn like it is a finish line. The idea electrifies the group. Staying awake becomes a challenge with an endpoint. You can endure anything if it ends with light. Your thoughts grow looser. Ideas connect that should not. You feel clever and dull at the same time. Decisions feel simple because consequences feel distant. Morning is an abstract concept. You realize that everyone here knows this will cost them later. The knowledge does not stop anyone. The price is paid tomorrow, and tomorrow is not part of tonight's negotiations. As the hours drag, bodies betray the mind. Someone stumbles. Someone forgets a name they should know. Someone snaps over nothing and apologizes too quickly. Fatigue sharpens emotions and dulls judgment in equal measure. You consider leaving. The thought arrives quietly and is dismissed just as quietly. Leaving now would mean admitting that the night won. Staying feels like resistance. When the sky finally lightens, relief and disappointment arrive together. You made it, whatever that means. Faces look older in the early light. The magic thins. The noise fades. People disperse awkwardly, unsure how to end something that simply ran out of darkness. You walk home with the strange calm of someone who ignored a basic need successfully. The streets look different in morning light. Less forgiving, more honest. Everything you did last night still exists, just without the protection of shadow. Sleep comes eventually, heavy and unavoidable. It is not restful, it is dense, full of fragments. When you wake, the cost arrives politely and then all at once. Your head aches. Your body resists movement. Small sounds feel aggressive. Memory returns selectively, highlighting moments you wish had stayed blurry. Conversations replay with new tone. Decisions gain weight. You understand now why people say sleep is optional. You can always choose not to. The night will let you. It will even reward you briefly, but the aftermath is not optional. It shows up whether you invite it or not, carrying clarity and consequence in equal measure. You got what you wanted from the night, and now you get what comes with it. You notice it once the night stalls. The laughter has thinned, the drinks are warm, the stories have all been told at least twice, and no one is ready to admit defeat by going home. This is the moment boredom arrives, not as silence, but as pressure. It presses on the group like weather, demanding a response. Medieval boredom is not passive. It does not scroll. It does not wait. It looks around for something to poke, test, rearrange, or ruin. You feel it creeping into your hands first. Fingers itch to do something, anything. Someone suggests a game no one has played before. Another person immediately adds a rule. A third adds a punishment. Suddenly you have invention. The game makes very little sense. It involves a cup, a knife, a candle flame, and a series of dares that escalate too quickly. No one asks who invented it. That would slow things down. What matters is that it exists now, born fully formed from collective restlessness. You watch rules solidify in real time, enforced with laughter and peer pressure rather than logic. Boredom creates creativity by removing standards. Ideas that would be dismissed in daylight become brilliant under torchlight. Someone starts drumming on the table with spoons. Another adds words. The song is obscene, clever, and terrible. It catches on immediately. Verses multiply, rhymes sharpen, insults become art. This is how culture happens when no one is supervising. Then boredom tilts darker. Someone suggests improving the game. Improving always means making it harsher. Stakes rise. The candle is moved closer. The knife is thrown harder. Laughter grows louder, a little forced, as if volume can disguise hesitation. You feel the shift when entertainment stops being about fun and starts being about proving something. This is where cruelty sneaks in, wearing a grin. A joke lands too close to home. The group laughs anyway. Someone flinches and pretends not to. Boredom rewards boldness, not kindness. The more uncomfortable the moment, the more interesting it feels. You sense that pulling back now would mark you as dull, so you lean in. Everyone does. Dares become personal. Stories are demanded, not volunteered. Secrets are teased out under the pretense of humor. Someone is always watching to see who breaks first. The night feeds on reactions, yet even here, creativity refuses to disappear. Someone modifies the song to mock the game itself. Someone else invents a gesture, a signal that means surrender without saying it. A language forms in the margins, subtle ways to opt out while pretending not to. Boredom teaches adaptation quickly. You realize how many medieval inventions come from moments like this. Games, rituals, insults, superstitions. all shaped by people trapped together after dark with nothing to do but test boundaries. Boredom does not ask whether an idea is good. It asks whether it is interesting. The candle burns lower. Shadows stretch and exaggerate faces. Someone suggests a new challenge involving balance and speed. Another suggests adding wagers. Coins appear. Pride appears faster. The invention is immediate and flawed and dangerous in exactly the right proportions. You watch as creativity and cruelty blur. A clever trick turns into a setup. A joke turns into a target. The group energy hums, unstable but alive. This is not boredom cured. This is boredom transformed. At some point, someone gets hurt. Not badly, just enough to make it real. The room goes quiet for half a breath, then fills with nervous laughter. The game pauses, recalibrates, resumes with minor adjustments that change nothing important. The night does not want to stop. It wants to continue differently. You understand then that boredom is the engine. It drives invention forward and drags cruelty along behind it like a cart that cannot be unhitched. Creativity flourishes because there is nothing else to do. Harm happens because limits feel negotiable after midnight. When the energy finally collapses, it does not end cleanly. People drift, fragments of ideas left unfinished, songs half remembered, games no one will admit to inventing. You carry the residue with you, the strange satisfaction of having made something out of nothing, even if it was messy and sharp around the edges. Boredom did not waste the night. It used it. You begin to notice the church before you hear it. The bells do not ring now. They loom. Even silent, they feel judgmental, like someone clearing their throat behind you while you are having fun. During the day, the church tolerates laughter as long as it is productive, measured, and preferably happening far away. At night, it becomes personal. You feel it in the way conversations lower when a shadow moves across a doorway. You see it in how songs abruptly switch from obscene to vaguely devotional when someone mentions a priest. Nighttime entertainment is not just noise to the church, it is competition. Souls are supposed to be tired, not amused. The problem is not morality, not really. It is scheduling. The church owns the morning. Morning prayer, morning labor, morning repentance. Night is supposed to be for sleep, quiet reflection, and the kind of exhaustion that prevents questions. Instead, people are awake, laughing, inventing games, telling stories that do not involve saints or approved miracles. This feels like theft. You understand why the clergy distrust it. Nothing good, from their perspective, ever happens after sunset unless it involves kneeling. Darkness removes supervision. Candles soften faces and sharpen imaginations. A joke told at night carries further than a sermon delivered at dawn. That alone is unforgivable. The church frames its concern carefully. Nighttime gatherings invite temptation. They invite disorder. They invite demons, witches, heresy, and spilled ale. All of this may be true, but you suspect the deeper issue is control. When people entertain themselves, they do not need permission. They do not need structure. They do not need explanations. You watch how sermons describe night fun as slippery. Dice become gateways to greed. Songs become invitations to sin. Dancing becomes a rehearsal for chaos. The logic stretches, but it works well enough when repeated often. Fear fills gaps that reason cannot, and yet, the church cannot fully stop it. They try curfews. They try fines. They try reminding everyone that God sees everything, even in the dark. People nod respectfully, then light candles anyway. The night belongs to whoever stays awake. You start to notice how clergy attend these entertainments indirectly. A priest passes by slowly, pretending not to hear the laughter spilling from a cellar. A monk pauses near a tavern window longer than necessary. Even condemnation requires observation. The church hates that nighttime fun equalizes people. In the dark, hierarchy blurs. The peasant laughs at the same joke as the merchant. The noble sings off-key like everyone else. Authority depends on visibility, and night refuses to cooperate. You hear priests complain that laughter loosens discipline, that people who laugh together think together, that jokes about the world lead dangerously close to jokes about God. They are not wrong. Night humor sharpens tongues. It trains people to question, to improvise, to notice absurdity. There is also the issue of memory. Nighttime events are harder to pin down. Stories conflict. Witnesses disagree. Confessions become vague. This drives record keepers mad. If something cannot be written cleanly into a ledger, it feels like a threat. The church prefers sins that happen privately and predictably. Night entertainment is communal and chaotic. It creates bonds that do not run through the altar. That alone makes it suspicious. You sense the tension in every warning delivered from the pulpit. Enjoy yourself, but not too much. Gather, but not too late. Laugh, but not loudly. The rules multiply because enforcement is impossible. What frustrates the church most is that night fun often feels harmless. People wake up tired but alive. They return to work. They attend Mass. Life continues. The dire warnings fail to materialize often enough to be convincing. Still, the church persists. It must. If night belongs to joy, then daylight might follow, and a world that laughs freely after dark might eventually ask why fear is required at all. So the bells loom. The sermons warn. The rules tighten. And every night, candles are lit anyway. You begin to understand it when the night stretches long and nothing about the day has been kind. The beds are hard. The food is repetitive. The work never finishes. And winter feels like a personal insult delivered slowly. In a world like this, fun is not a luxury. It is a coping mechanism with a pulse. You watch people gather after dark, not because they are carefree, but because sitting alone with your thoughts is dangerous when your thoughts are mostly about hunger, debt, and the way your joints ache before the weather changes. Laughter becomes a tool. Noise becomes insulation. If you are loud enough, misery cannot hear you thinking. Fun fills gaps that comfort never arrives to occupy. There are no soft chairs waiting at home, no private rooms, no reliable warmth. Entertainment steps in where cushions and certainty fail. A crude joke distracts from the cold. A game distracts from the calendar. A song distracts from the fact that tomorrow looks exactly like today, only heavier. You notice how quickly people reach for amusement when things go wrong. A failed harvest leads to a drinking contest. A lost job leads to storytelling. Someone gets sick, and suddenly everyone is singing. This is not denial. It is triage. When you cannot fix the problem, you blunt its edges. The humor is sharp because it has to be. Gentle jokes do not cut through despair. Insults land harder. Stories exaggerate suffering until it becomes absurd. If you laugh at it, it shrinks. If you ignore it, it grows teeth. You see children learning this early. They mock what scares them. They turn threats into games. They dare each other to touch the things adults warn about. Fear becomes manageable when you can point at it and laugh. This is survival training disguised as play. At night, the rules loosen just enough to let people breathe. You see laborers joke about their lords, not because rebellion is imminent, but because the pressure needs a release valve. If it stays sealed, something breaks. Fun keeps the system intact by preventing explosions. You watch people who have lost everything still show up to sing. The song costs nothing. It requires no permission. It reminds them they are still here. In a place where death is casual and illness is common, joy becomes defiance. Even cruelty, uncomfortable as it is, serves a purpose. It reminds people they are alive enough to feel something. Pain, embarrassment, and shock prove that nerves still work. This does not make it noble, but it makes it understandable. Fun also creates memory. When days blur together in labor and survival, nights provide landmarks. You remember the night someone fell off the table. You remember the night the song changed halfway through. You remember the night laughter hurt your ribs. These moments stitch time together. You notice how often people repeat stories of good nights. They carry them like provisions. A bad day is survivable if you can replay a moment where you laughed until you forgot to be tired. Comfort is temporary. Memory lasts longer. There is also the matter of community. Fun binds people faster than duty. Shared laughter creates loyalty. Inside jokes become social glue. When you depend on others to survive illness, accidents, and bad luck, bonds matter more than politeness. You realize that without entertainment, people would not endure. Work alone is not enough. Faith alone is not enough. Rules alone are not enough. Something has to soften the edges of reality, or the edges will cut deeper every day. Fun does not erase hardship. It gives people enough distance to face it again in the morning. It is not escape. It is recalibration. By the time the night winds down, you see the exhaustion settle back in. People drift home, still cold, still sore, still worried. But something has shifted. They walk a little lighter. They carry less weight in their chests. In a world without comfort, joy is not optional. It is how you stay. You feel it settling in long before anyone names it. Exhaustion arrives quietly, not with drama, but with heaviness. Your shoulders ache in a way that feels older than you are. Your eyes burn from smoke and candlelight. Your body carries the entire day like a sack of stones that no one ever offered to help you set down. Sleep should solve this. Everyone knows that. Everyone ignores it. You watch people push past tiredness the way you step over a puddle in the street, carefully, deliberately, pretending it is not there. Night after night, they stay awake longer than sense allows. Not because they are foolish, but because rest without relief feels pointless. Lying still does not undo hunger. Closing your eyes does not erase tomorrow. So exhaustion becomes the background hum of everything. It makes laughter sharper. It makes jokes land harder. It makes small pleasures feel enormous. A bad song sounds brilliant. A stupid game feels meaningful. A flicker of joy becomes something you cling to with both hands. You notice how strange joy thrives when people are too tired to be dignified. Faces soften, voices loosen. Someone laughs at the wrong moment and no one corrects them. Someone else joins in. Not because it is funny, but because stopping would require effort. Exhaustion strips away restraint. It lowers the bar until everyone can step over it. Wit becomes sloppy. Humor turns dark and loud. People say things they would never say before sunset, and then laugh because the truth slipped out sideways. You feel it in your own body. The way your head tilts slightly when listening. The way you forget what you were about to say and decide it does not matter. The way the idea of another song feels unbearable until it starts. And then suddenly it is necessary. Strange joy does not arrive polished. It stumbles in wearing borrowed shoes. It smells like smoke and spilled drink. It carries the energy of people who know they are running on empty and keep going anyway. You understand why silliness becomes essential. When the body is exhausted, seriousness feels cruel. No one wants to talk about plans or consequences or virtue. Those belong to daylight. Night belongs to survival through absurdity. Someone tells a story that goes nowhere and everyone listens like it matters. Someone else interrupts with a worse story and it is somehow better. The group laughs not because the content is clever, but because the shared fatigue binds them tighter than logic ever could. You see how exhaustion creates permission. Permission to be foolish, permission to be loud, permission to care less about appearing respectable. When you are this tired, pretending takes too much effort. There is humor in the way people acknowledge it without saying it. Someone yawns and immediately starts a game. Someone complains about aching feet and then dances. The body protests and the spirit responds with defiance. You feel the edge where joy turns desperate, where laughter comes a little too fast, where silence feels threatening. That is when the strangest fun appears. Dares that make no sense. Songs with too many verses. Games that exist only because stopping would mean facing how tired everyone truly is. Exhaustion makes joy feel earned. You have worked all day. You have endured. Now you get this, even if this is ridiculous. Even if it costs you sleep you cannot afford. You sense how this pattern repeats night after night, not because people forget the cost, but because the cost feels unavoidable anyway. Tomorrow will be hard whether you rest or not. Tonight, at least, there is laughter. There is a moment when you realize you are too tired to stop smiling. It surprises you. The joy feels fragile, but real. It is not happiness. It is something rougher and more honest. You lean into it because pulling away would mean sitting alone with the ache in your bones and the weight in your chest. Strange joy feels lighter. It asks less of you. As the night thins out and people drift away, you feel the exhaustion deepen, but it no longer feels empty. It feels used, spent on something that mattered, even if only for a few hours. You know you will pay for it in the morning. Everyone does. But right now, tired as you are, the joy feels necessary. You step away from the night slowly, as if leaving too quickly might offend it. The candles burn low behind you. Laughter fades into fragments, then into memory. What remains clings to you. The smell of smoke in your hair, the echo of jokes that were never meant to survive daylight. You realize how thin the line has been the entire time. Fun and danger sharing the same bench, the same cup, the same bad idea passed from hand to hand. No one planned for harm. No one ever does. It just kept showing up, invited by fatigue and a lack of oversight. This is what happens when people are tired and no one is watching closely. Rules soften, judgment slips, the world feels bendable. A joke stretches too far, a game sharpens its edges. Someone laughs when they should stop and keeps going because stopping feels heavier than continuing. You understand now that the medieval night is not reckless by accident. It is reckless by necessity. Supervision disappears with the sun. Authority sleeps. Consequences feel theoretical when tomorrow already promises discomfort. You think back on how easily joy escalated, how laughter demanded volume, how boredom demanded invention, how invention demanded risk. It was never enough to simply enjoy something. Enjoyment had to prove itself. It had to flirt with danger to feel real. There is humor in this realization, uncomfortable but honest. Humans do not misbehave because they are evil. They misbehave because they are exhausted and curious and temporarily free from consequences. Give anyone darkness, fatigue, and a group of equally tired companions, and something unpredictable will happen. You recall moments where things could have gone wrong more seriously, a stumble near a flame, a joke that almost became a fight, a dare that ended just short of disaster. These moments pass quickly, but they linger longer in hindsight. Fun has always carried risk. It loosens grip and sharpens impulse. It invites boldness where caution once lived. When people are rested and supervised, fun stays polite. When they are not, it grows teeth. You think of how many rules exist simply to keep tired people from entertaining themselves too freely. Curfews, laws, sermons, warnings framed as morality when they are really about preventing chaos. History is filled with attempts to manage what happens when humans gather after dark with nothing to lose but sleep. And still, the night persists. It always will. There will always be moments where people choose laughter over rest, noise over silence, connection over caution. It is not rational. It is human. You feel a strange affection for it now. The danger does not erase the joy. It explains it. The risk gives weight to the laughter, texture to the memory. Safe fun rarely leaves a mark. This kind does. As you move farther from the glow, you notice how quickly the body remembers its limits. The ache returns. The fatigue settles deeper. Daylight waits patiently, ready to reclaim its order and expectations. The night does not protest. It never does. It knows it will be back. You carry with you the understanding that none of this is new. Medieval streets, modern rooms, different centuries, same pattern. Tired people, unsupervised moments, laughter tipping into something sharper. The setting changes. The behavior does not. Fun has always been dangerous in these conditions because it bypasses planning and goes straight to impulse. It thrives on shared weakness. It rewards boldness and forgets caution. It feels necessary precisely because it costs something. You do not leave the night disappointed. You leave informed. This is what humans do when they are worn down and left alone together. They laugh, they test limits, they create chaos, and they call it fun.